boy was born into the most powerful family, a bloodline that had even defeated gods. But he was a failure. No talent, no divine weapon, treated like trash by his own father. His name was Bel. He was cast out of his home while trying to protect his sister, until one day, he found an impossible weapon, the divine sheath Avalon, a power capable of summoning legendary weapons. And now, the boy who was once called trash will destroy anyone who stands in his way. Certain weapons can only be found among the talented and are known as divine weapons. As the materialization of a person's soul, they are unique and very special pieces of equipment. With unique powers, their wielders face powerful creatures and destroy them with ease. Known for having defeated the evil god, there exists the noble ducal family, Catastrophe. Members of this family are born with everything, possessing strong bodies and great physical resistance. They also carry an exceptional talent for combat from a very early age. They even awaken divine weapons with power that is simply incredible and utterly devastating. Born into this family, the young man believed he would become a hero using his sacred armament, but it seems fate had other plans, as everything was revealed at the oracle ceremony. On that day, he was told that he simply had no talent for combat whatsoever. Thus, he became the one and only great failure in his family's history. Pushed to the ground, he hears his father shouting at him to get lost, calling him a disgrace. Then, the second son of the Catastrophe family appears, a boy named Zane. Grabbing the boy by the collar, Zane says that trash like him doesn't belong there. With a bruised face, the boy just endures the abuse in silence, without reacting. Meanwhile, the eldest daughter, Jessica, watches the scene with the youngest, Syra. Trying to help, Sarah runs toward him, desperately calling his name. Without her noticing, her older sister sticks out her foot to trip her. Falling to the ground, the girl is left under her older sister's cold gaze. Then, she steps on the girl's head and humiliates her for her dirty blood. Seeing the horrible scene, the boy desperately screams his sister Sarah's name. Before he could do anything, Zane hits him with a hard blow to the stomach. Mocking them both, Zane hits him with another punch, talking about filthy half-breeds. As he takes the blow to his face, he hears Zane repeatedly calling him a mutt. Because they were children of concubines, they were constantly called mutts by everyone. In a memory, he apologizes to Sarah, saying it's all his fault, but she smiles and tells him not to worry, assuring him she would stay by his side. Moved, he promises that he will become strong, even if he doesn't have a divine weapon. With great determination, he swears he will protect her with his own life. Accepting his promise, she hugs him and thanks him for always being with her. Unfortunately, he couldn't keep his promise, as he was banished from home just a few days later. Alone in the heavy rain, he screams in frustration and anger at his fate. Without him around, his sister Sarah would be alone with those cruel people. Even knowing how difficult it would be, he trains intensely to get stronger somehow. With no other choice, he sets off on a journey to find his own path. After managing to save up some money, he goes to a shop to buy his equipment. Reaching the counter, he pours out the coins and asks for one of every type of weapon. Startled by the request, the shopkeeper asks if he's planning on starting a war. After 2 years, he continues his journey without stopping to rest for a single day. Traveling quickly on horseback, he now carries several different weapons on his back. With a more mature expression, he presses forward, completely focused on his goal. Along the way, he encounters a horde of orcs and goblins in the forest. Showing off his vast arsenal, he prepares for the coming fight. With a serious look, he warns the monsters that the battle is about to begin. Wielding his sword, he charges forward and prepares for the first attack of the battle. Switching between his various weapons, he attacks the monster horde with great speed. In a short time, he defeats all the monsters, left standing among the bodies. Just then, a mysterious hooded figure observes him from a cliff above. Calling him boy, the hooded person finally breaks the silence between them. Then she asks why he always carries so many different weapons with him. Curious, the figure wants to know if it's because he doesn't have a divine weapon. The mysterious person then reveals that she was looking for someone to entrust with something important. She explains that she was seeking someone with enough potential to become the true hero. Confused by the situation, the boy stares at the figure, not understanding what is happening. Raising her hand, the hooded figure begins to gather a large amount of energy. Firing the energy, she strikes the ground right in front of the frightened boy. At the point of impact, a sword sheath appears, stuck in the ground before him. Completely surprised by what happened, he stands frozen before the weapon. Saying she will entrust the weapon to him, the figure makes her final proposal. Now the mysterious sheath waits on the ground, waiting to be picked up by him. Looking at the object, he asks in confusion if that's really a sword for him. Approaching it, he decides to pick up the sheath to examine the item more closely. Holding it, he realizes it's just a sheath and shouts in surprise at the situation. That was the divine sheath Avalon, which allowed one to store and pass on divine weapons. Inside it were the weapons of the 5 great heroes from the world's history. Determined, he decides he will wield all of them to become the strongest. 3 years passed and a great dragon appears, flying toward the tower where they were. The giant creature then approaches him from behind and lets out a terrifying roar. Opening its mouth, the dragon prepares a huge blast of fire in his direction. Extending his hand, he calmly says he doesn't really care about the attack. Without looking away, he adds that he doesn't mind the heat one bit. Then he raises the sheath and shouts the name Avalon, preparing to fight. Wielding the item, he gets into position to use all the power stored within. With a slight smile, he commands the weapon inside it to finally manifest. At that, he begins to pull the weapon from inside the sheath with great force. Drawing the first weapon from the sheath, he prepares for the first counterattack. On his back, he summons Achilles' windshield to protect himself from the attack. Using the Absolute Tempest, he completely blocks the dragon's powerful blast of fire. Switching weapons, he now wields the gigantic thunder hammer, called Mjolnir. With some effort, he lifts the enormous hammer for his next attack. Leaping toward the dragon, he readies the final blow with his weapon. Then he strikes the dragon's head with Thor's hammer, defeating the creature. With the fight over, the figure says that Belle has finally mastered the Sheath Avalon. Advising him to go, she says that not even an S-rank paladin would be a match for him. Hearing her words, he stares at the mysterious figure with a serious and determined look. At that, he shouts, "Yes," fully accepting his new and important mission. After 5 years of exile, he finally has the power to protect his sister. Riding as fast as he can, he begs for his sister Sarah to wait. With total determination, he yells that he's coming to save her from everything. But upon arriving, he finds the entire city destroyed and on fire. Shocked by the scene, he wonders what the hell was happening in that place. Amidst the flames, he sees several flags with a specific crest being raised. Recognizing the symbol, he notes that it was the crest of the Duchy of Rothwindsor. Seeing the bloody battle, he realizes that a terrible civil war had begun. Running desperately through the castle, he shouts, asking where his sister Sarah is. Stopping before a large door, he then prepares to enter the room. Upon opening the door, he finds his sister Sarah on the floor, unconscious. Unable to believe it, he stands paralyzed, saying that this can't be real. Snapping out of his trance, he runs toward her to check what happened. Holding her body, he shouts Sarah's name repeatedly, trying to wake her up. Looking at her face, he sees her with her eyes closed and badly injured. With his face contorted in rage, he grinds his teeth, unable to say a word. In a memory, he sees her smiling and saying she would always be by his side. Back in reality, he lets out a loud scream as he holds her tightly. Crying, he asks why, and what was the point of all the power he had gained. Suddenly, a surprise attack rushes toward the two siblings. Hit squarely, he is thrown back along with her body. The attack pierces through his body, making him scream in pain from the heavy impact. Then a mysterious figure approaches slowly, stepping heavily on the ground. Seeing the silhouette, he realizes it's an S-rank divine weapon user. In a cold voice, the figure asks if he is Bel Catastrophe, the exile. Without a care, the person says they will just send him to be with his sister. Realizing the truth, Bel understands that this was the one who took Sarah's life. Then the villain tells him to be a good brother and keep her company. Filled with rage, Bel screams, asking how he dares to do such a thing. Another powerful attack is launched, hitting the boy head-on and finishing him off. As his consciousness fades, he refuses to die without getting his revenge. The scene changes, and he sees himself as a child again at the old oracle ceremony. Utterly confused, he looks at his hands and asks aloud where he is. Recognizing the stained glass window, he wonders how he can be alive in the Catastrophe Cathedral. The priest then announces that the oracle ceremony will finally begin. Looking at his own hands, he realizes with a shock that he has gone back in time. Asking him to extend his arms, the priest tells him to imagine his divine armament. With a slight smile, he prepares to summon his own divine armament. Closing his eyes, he knows he will be banished again for not having a weapon. Placing his hands on the priest, he feels a different energy coming from the ritual. Seeing the result, he is completely shocked and says that this is simply impossible. But without a doubt, he realizes that the weapon that appeared is Avalon. Holding the sheath, he wonders if he can now redo everything. With a determined look, he decides he will change his destiny with this power. Wielding the sheath, he declares that his real life will finally begin now. Gripping the sheath tightly, he faces everyone with a new determination in his eyes. Holding the item, the priest remarks that a divine sheath is an incredibly rare weapon. With a smile, he asks if the priest really thinks he can't fight. The priest becomes flustered, stammering as he tries to explain himself. Bel then assures them not to worry, because this is the best weapon in existence. Running down the hall, he thinks to himself that if he's in the past, Sarah must be alive. With her name on his mind, he pushes forward, determined to find his beloved sister. Reaching the bedroom door, he turns the handle without a moment's hesitation. Inside, Sarah is sitting by the window. She notices someone has entered the room. Turning with a wide smile, she calls out his name, overjoyed to see him again. Seeing his sister, he realizes she's just as beautiful as he remembered. She then runs to him, calling out, "Brother!" as she goes in for a hug. Full of excitement, she asks how the ceremony went and what weapon he awakened. Hugging her tightly, he tells her he's so happy she's finally alive. Confused by his reaction, she asks what's wrong. Holding her tight, he apologizes for failing to protect her in his past life. In a brief flashback, he relives the tragic moment he found her lying on the ground. Vowing that this time will be different, he promises to protect her and prevent that pain. She complains that his hug is too tight, making him apologize and let go. Smiling, she tells him it's all right and that she was really happy with the hug. Looking closely, she notices something different about her dear brother's face. Then she sees his tears and asks why he's crying. Gently caressing his face, she tells him everything will be fine because she's here with him. Deeply moved, he can only whisper her name as he continues to cry. Just then, Zane bursts into the room, mocking the two Mutt siblings for getting along. With a wicked smile, he says he's finally found his little brother, Belle. Protecting Sierra, Belle faces him and worriedly calls him by his name, Zane. Letting out a laugh, Zane tells them he overheard their entire conversation. Putting an arm around Belle, he asks what interesting item he got from the ceremony. Without looking at him, Belle replies that he only got a sheath as a weapon. Holding back a laugh, Zane starts to mock his little brother's predicament. Laughing out loud, he says a sheath is fitting for a mutt like Belle. Asking how he's going to fight, Zane calls them both a pair of complete idiots. Hearing the insults, Belle silently clenches his fist, hard. In a low voice, he tells Zane to take back what he said about his sister. Confused by his reaction, Zane asks if he said something wrong. Glaring at him, Belle yells for him to take back what he said right now. Furious, Zane asks if he's really daring to challenge his older brother. Yelling that he'll teach him a lesson, he lunges forward to punch him right in the face. But Belle is ready for the counterattack, swiftly drawing back his fist. Dodging the blow, he lands a powerful punch right in his brother's stomach. Gasping for air, Zane screams in pain from the powerful impact. He then drops to his knees, unable to stand up from the pain. Stepping closer, Belle warns him never to insult Sierra in front of him again. Still on the ground, Zane curses at him, his eyes filled with hatred and rage. Furious, Zane yells not to mess with him as he channels energy into his hand. Summoning his flaming spear, he threatens to roast him alive. With a serious expression, Belle accepts the challenge and decides to fight. Asking Sarah to step back, he moves in front of her to shield her from the attack. With a gentle gesture, he reassures her, saying everything is fine for now. With a confident smile, he tells her to leave everything to him. He then shouts the name Avalon and prepares to unleash his full power. Gripping the sheath tightly, he takes a stance for the fight against his brother. Laughing at the situation, Zane asks if he really thinks he can win with just a sheath. He then boasts that he's an E-rank paladin and that Belle doesn't stand a chance. Unfazed, Belle watches him in silence, waiting for his brother's next move. In this hierarchy, paladins are divided into ranks that measure their level of power. Upon receiving their divine weapon, a user is classified as a mere F rank. Then, once they can channel mana into the weapon, they become an E-rank paladin. From D rank and above, it's possible to use mana for special attacks. To surpass B rank, one must awaken the divine weapon's unique abilities. Belle finds it amusing that Zane is so proud of being an E rank, even though he's still just developing. With a slight smile, he readies himself for the fight against his brother. Seeing the smile, Zane asks what he's laughing at and if he's gone mad. With a smirk, he says he just thought his brother was being cute. Furious at the taunt, Zane yells for the mutt to know his place and charges. Worried about the situation, Sarah desperately screams her older brother's name. Belle then calls for the Sword of Light to manifest and emerge from the sheath. Summoning Caliburn, he lunges forward and slices through his brother's flame attack. Surprised, Zane wonders how his flame attack was stopped so easily. Gripping the sword, he asks his brother what kind of weapon that is. The impact of the blow sends Zane staggering backward, completely off balance. His spear flies out of his hands, clattering to the ground and spinning for a few seconds. Terrified, he scrambles backward and fearfully retrieves his weapon. Lying on the ground, he wonders how this is possible since he was certain the sheath was empty. Taking a step forward, Belle asks his brother what he's going to do now. Staring down at Zane, He asks if he wants to be forced to cry and beg for forgiveness. Furious, Zane shouts that he was tricked and that he wouldn't have messed with him otherwise. Backing away, he threatens him, warning that he won't get away with this. Then he turns and tries to flee, running desperately away from his brother. Bell then calls out to him, saying they're not done talking. Pulling out another weapon, he summons the flame pistol, known as Ragnarok. Without hesitation, he aims and fires a shot in the direction Zane is running. As he tries to escape, Zane glances back and sees the attack flying toward him. The shot grazes his face, missing him by a hair's breadth. Hitting the window, the shot punches a hole through the glass, shattering it. Zane stops running and stares at the hole in the window, completely shocked. Unable to understand, he freezes, wondering what just happened. He then realizes the weapon Bell is holding is a pistol. Shocked, he wonders how it's possible to have multiple weapons, since he'd just seen the sword. Walking toward him, Bell warns him never to mess with him or Sarah again. Aiming the gun, he adds that if Zane messes with them again, speechless, Zane just stares at him, unable to say a single word. At that, Bell threatens to blow his head off if he doesn't obey his warning. Screaming in fear, Zane runs desperately out the door, leaving Belle behind. Still processing what she just saw, she says that what he did was simply incredible. He asks if Sarah is okay, and she admits she was worried about him. Smiling, he reminds her that he told her to leave everything to him, just like he promised. With her hands clasped, she says he was so cool and brave. He then declares that he'll never lose to anyone, so he can always protect that smile. In the next scene, a duke asks Zane if what he told him is true. Facing his father, Zane confirms the story, addressing him as "My Lord Duke." With a serious expression, Duke Gallion understands that Bell received multiple weapons. Kneeling, Zane insists the weapon isn't normal and must be the result of a demonic pact. With a hateful glare, he screams that Bell must be banished at once. Finding the story quite interesting, the Duke reflects on what he's just heard. Then he stands up and simply turns away, leaving a confused Zane behind him. Running after him, Zane asks where he is going. The Duke replies that he's going to see Bell. With a firm resolve, he says he wants to see everything for himself. He lets out a sigh of relief, finally able to rest from the chaos. After everything, he throws himself onto his bed, exhausted, to regain his energy. Even after defeating Zane, he realizes he's still in a child's body. Looking at his hand, he notices he got tired quickly because he can't control his mana well. In fact, he tried to shoot a fireball, but a regular one came out instead. Lying in bed, he concludes that his current strength is only F rank. Closing his eyes, he decides he can't stay this weak for long. In a memory, he relives the scene of the terrible civil war he witnessed before. That day, it was the Rothwindsors who attacked and destroyed everything in their path. As a rival family, anything could have triggered the attack. Now he's certain the shadowy figure who attacked him was one of them. Raising his hand, he swears to himself that he will protect Sarah this time. To do that, he knows he needs to improve his status in the household first. Just then, someone knocks on his door, suddenly interrupting his thoughts. Still lying down, he wonders who it could be at this time of night. Entering the room, the Duke calls out to Bell, saying it's been a long time. Startled by the visit, Bell gets up and asks what his father is doing there. That was Gallion Catastrophe, the current head of the powerful and famous ducal family. 20 years ago, he faced the terrible evil god in a great battle. Known as the Genesis Sword Saint, he fought alone across the entire continent. Now, the Duke enters the room accompanied by Zane, who follows closely behind. With a serious look, Bell understands the situation could get very complicated now. Seeing the scene, he realizes Zane probably set something up to harm him, but for him, this unexpected visit from the Duke is simply perfect, because the fastest way to improve his status is to get his father's attention. Kneeling, he greets the Duke, saying he hasn't seen him in a long time. At this, his father comments that he has changed a lot since they last saw each other. Telling him to relax, the Duke says he came as a father to talk for a bit, but Bell refuses, explaining that one wrong word could easily get out of hand. Hearing the response, the Duke silently reflects on his son's words. Extending his hand, the Duke orders Bell to rise, and he promptly obeys. Accepting the stance, the Duke decides he will adopt his son's same mindset. Just then, Bell feels an overwhelming pressure coming at him with great force. Sensing the Duke's strength, he wonders about the terrifying spiritual pressure. With just a glance, the Duke manages to leave Bell completely tense and unable to react. With a victorious smile, Zane celebrates what he thinks is the end of Bell. Zane knows that no one in that house can stand up to his father when he's serious. Facing his father, Bell prepares to answer the questions that will follow. He explains that he got angry because Zane was mistreating their younger sister. With an intimidating gaze, The Duke asks if he broke the rules out of revenge. Without hesitation, Bell confirms that he did and says he regrets nothing. The Duke then asks if he truly doesn't regret breaking his rules. Bell replies that abandoning someone you love would be a great disgrace for a paladin. With a hand on his chest, he swears he will fight to protect his sister. Hearing his words, the Duke observes him intently, with a serious and piercing gaze. Holding his sword, the Duke declares that this is the path of the chosen knight. Lifting his head, Bell faces his father, ready for whatever comes next. Pointing his sword, the Duke asks if Bell would fight even if the opponent was him. With a firm gaze, Bell confirms he would face even the Lord Duke. The Duke observes him for a moment, analyzing his son's serious reply. With a slight smile, he says he liked the answer he just heard. He then announces he will let the incident slide, leaving Zane completely shocked. Turning to Zane, he criticizes him for losing to his younger brother. Not knowing what to say, Zane freezes at his father's scolding. Telling him to be ashamed, the Duke orders Zane to get out of his sight. The Duke then says he understands the knight's path Bell has chosen to follow. Praising his resolve, he says it's a splendid stance for a man. Then the Duke asks Bell to show him his true and incredible power. With his back turned, he orders the boy to get his divine armament for the fight. Closing his eyes, Bell simply agrees to the request and says he understands. Concentrating his energy, he prepares to show his power to the Duke. Upon seeing the weapon, the Duke is surprised by what's in front of him. Then Bell reveals his divine armament is the legendary sheath called Avalon. In disbelief, the Duke yells that it's impossible for him to have gotten a sheath. He remembers the rumors about the weapon that holds the paladin's treasures. The Duke asks if it's true that he used a sword and a pistol. Confirming the story, he explains that both weapons are inside the sheath. To prove it, he manifests the sword and the pistol at the same time before the Duke. Shocked, the Duke wonders how he took other divine weapons from the sheath. Bell then explains that he can only use 2, but there are 3 other weapons stored away. Surprised, he realizes that his son, Bel Catastrophe, is the next great hero. The Duke says he has no interest in the weak, not even in small children, but he adds that from now on, he will expect a lot from Bell. Turning his back, he tells the boy to work hard to get strong. After leaving, he closes the door, leaving Bell alone in the room again. Exhausted, he collapses to the floor, feeling the incredible pressure that radiated from his father. Now he needs to prove his strength, even in a child's body. To reach D rank, he decides he needs to defeat monsters to gain mana. With this in mind, he decides to start by hunting the orcs in the nearest forest. The scene shifts to the forest, as night falls under the bright glow of the full moon. On the ground, an orc's head appears in the middle of a dark puddle. Just then, a monstrous creature emerges from the shadows, revealing its terrifying presence to all. Revealing itself completely, the creature stands over the bodies of the other orcs. Grabbing one of the bodies, the creature displays all its strength and great brutality. With a bloodied mouth, the creature lets out a low and very menacing growl. Then, it raises its head and lets out a powerful howl at the full moon. Back in the forest, Bell says the place brings back a lot of memories. He remembers training there after being banished in his past life. He finds it strange that he hasn't encountered any monsters yet. Suddenly, 2 red eyes emerge from the darkness, watching his every move. He stops walking and finds the body of an orc in a puddle. Analyzing the scene, he sees the orc's body is completely dismembered. Startled, he turns his head to the side, sensing a presence in the forest. A loud roar echoes from behind, making the ground shake with its force. Turning around quickly, he prepares for the fight that's about to begin. A surprise attack comes at him, and he barely defends himself with his sword. The force of the blow throws him back, and he tumbles to the ground. Still on the ground, he wonders what kind of creature could attack with such strength. Before him, a huge white wolf, a Fenrir, appears and stares him down. Now he understands why there were no monsters. The creature is D rank. Without mana, he knows he has the strength of an E rank at best. Although he wants to run, he braces himself to fight the creature before him. Growling, the creature stares at him, and he knows he can't turn his back. The 2 stare each other down, waiting for the other to make the first move. Charging forward, the monster rushes him at full speed. Dodging by a hair's breadth, he manages to escape the great beast's direct attack. Without wasting a second, he summons the Ragnarok pistol for an immediate counterattack. From the ground, he quickly fires at the approaching creature, but the beast dodges the shots with truly impressive agility. Frustrated by the failure, he yells out in anger. He then realizes the bullets are slow due to his lack of mana. Seeing the gun is useless, he decides to switch to his other sword. Seizing the opening, the Fenrir charges again for another direct attack. With its sharp claws, the creature readies a strike with its front paw. Ducking underneath, he narrowly escapes the beast's massive paw. Seeing the perfect opportunity, he prepares his decisive blow against the monster. As he strikes with his sword, he sees his attack pass through a clone of the Fenrir. Shocked by the ability, he shouts in disbelief at what just happened. Then, he and the creature face off again, preparing for the next round. He gets angry, knowing that in his past life, he would have easily cut the monster down. The Fenrir then lunges again, trying to bite his head off with incredible speed. Blocking the attack, he realizes he can't keep up with the creature's speed. Spinning his sword, he tries to defend against attacks coming from all sides. One of the attacks grazes him, leaving a cut on his arm. Surrounded by clones, he realizes he won't be able to dodge the next attack. In despair, he cries out in pain as he braces for the final blow. The Fenrir then lunges with its mouth wide open, ready to devour him whole. With a cut on his face, he refuses to let it all end here. Shouting the name Achilles, he summons his defensive weapon, a large shield. With the shield in hand, he gets ready to block the creature's attack. Focused, he watches the monster, waiting for the right moment to counterattack. He blocks the attack with the shield, but is forcefully pushed back by the impact. Falling to the ground, he drops his weapons and is left completely vulnerable. Panting, he knows that if things keep going like this, he doesn't stand a chance. Dragging himself backward, he realizes he's really going to die here in the forest. The monster closes in, and he understands all his weapons have been useless. Looking at the creature, he concludes that the hammer won't work either. With no other choice, he decides to use his last divine weapon. Facing the creature, he prepares for what might be his final attack. Closing his eyes, he calls for his weapon, waiting for the right moment to act. Seeing the monster's paw, he shouts the name Aegis to summon his final weapon. The Fenrir is then thrown back by a blast of energy. Landing, the monster faces Bel, who now has a new combat stance. Bel now equips a gauntlet on his arm, preparing for the fight. With a serious look, he says he didn't want to use the weapon, but he was forced to. The Fenrir then prepares to attack, digging its claws firmly into the ground. Roaring, the Fenrir charges again, but with even more impressive speed. But Bel just watches the attack, remaining calm in the face of the creature's charge. The monster's jaws snap shut, but he manages to dodge at the last second. Standing behind the creature, he apologizes, holding the hammer firmly. Then he warns the monster that it won't be able to hit him like before. With a determined look, he raises the hammer for his next attack. He then smashes the Fenrir's head with an incredibly strong and heavy blow. The creature screams in pain, feeling the devastating weight of the hammer on its head. That is the Aegis, the Gauntlet of Darkness, which greatly increases his strength. It also has another ability, commanding him to destroy his opponent. Even wounded, the Fenrir roars and lunges one last time for a final attack. With his red eyes, he says the monster's time has finally come. Calling it a mutt, he invites it to their final confrontation. He then charges forward and easily smashes all the clones that appear in his path. With one last strike, he hits the Fenrir with the hammer, ending the fight. With a malicious smile, he uses the gauntlet's power for the finishing blow. Letting out a sigh, he sees the Fenrir's body on the ground, finally defeated. Looking at the gauntlet, he's grateful he could end the fight quickly. The divine weapons of darkness cannot be dismissed in combat and corrupt the user. Kneeling, he wonders why there was a Fenrir here since there wasn't one before. Shrugging it off, he approaches the hammer and notices something strange about the weapon. The hammer begins to absorb the monster's energy, making Bel realize what's happening. Now he can use the monster's attributes, making his hunts more effective. Excited, he gets ready to test the new powers he just acquired. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Sira is humming and making a flower crown. With a smile, she celebrates finishing the crown she was making. Holding the crown, she wonders if her brother will like the gift. Suddenly, the crown is snatched from her hands, startling her. Jessica then appears and scoffs at the crown, asking what piece of junk it is. With a contemptuous smile, she says the crown suits a filthy girl. Frightened, Sira calls out her older sister's name, not understanding the cruelty. Turning to Spencer, Jessica asks what he thinks of the flower crown. With a sneer, he agrees that the crown is indeed quite filthy. She then tosses the crown into the air, and Spencer gets ready to destroy it. The crown is sliced mid-air by Spencer's whip, completely destroying it. With his weapon in hand, he looks at the scene with an air of superiority. Shocked, Sarah can only stammer, unable to form a complete sentence. Jessica then says she's bored and has nothing to do right now. Pulling out her pistol, she invites Sarah to come out and have some fun. Pointing the gun at her sister, she says it's time for some target practice. Without hesitation, she fires, and the shot grazes the girl's face. Terrified, Sarah screams in fear at her older sister's attack. Just then, Belle appears and says he'll play with her if she's that bored. Surprised, Sarah turns and is overjoyed to see her brother appearing to save her. With a smirk, he says he was looking for an excuse to test his new gear. Spencer asks what he's trying to do, meddling in their fun. Annoyed, Jessica says no stray is going to ruin her fun right now. Hugging her brother, Sarah calls out to him, and he comforts her, saying everything is okay. With a cold gaze, he stares down Spencer, bracing for the coming confrontation. Angry, Spencer asks if he dares to look at Lady Jessica that way. Belle then remembers that this guy is his sister Jessica's personal attendant. In a serious tone, he criticizes him for speaking so rudely to a son of the Duke. Spencer laughs and says he won't show any respect to the son of a concubine. Belle just stares at him in silence, not responding to the attendant's taunt. Jessica asks what happened, and if he got carried away after beating Zane. Spencer remarks that Zane was too careless to lose to a sheath. Laughing, Jessica says it was a lucky shot, but the defeat was embarrassing. Closing his eyes, Belle suggests they see the truth for themselves. Opening his eyes, he tells them to find out whether it was luck or not. Furious at his audacity, Jessica glares at him with a look full of contempt. Angry, Jessica yells at Spencer and tells him to take out the trash. With a confident smile, Spencer says he'll handle the situation as a matter of course. With his whip, he pins a flower to the ground, freezing it instantly. Looking at the frozen flower, he turns to his lady, awaiting her next command. Belle faces him, knowing the coming fight won't be easy at all. That was Spencer Gray, a D-rank paladin with an ice whip. Being D-rank, he was much stronger than Zane, who was only E-rank. With a cold stare, Belle prepares to face a much stronger enemy. Spencer then threatens him, saying he'll freeze his legs and arms. Then, he promises to beat his face until it's unrecognizable. Unfazed, Belle accuses him of talking too much and challenges him to a fight. With a serious look, he warns that Spencer will suffer for making Sarah cry. Enraged by his audacity, Spencer yells at him not to underestimate him in battle. With his whip, he warns that he's going to turn Belle into a popsicle. Then he attacks with the whip, lunging forward with a swift, freezing strike. Dodging the blows, Belle moves with impressive agility to escape the whip. Shocked, Jessica yells, asking how he managed to dodge Spencer's attack. Belle knows the enemy is good, but he can't help but feel confident. Compared to his previous training, he thinks this is all child's play. Impressed, Sarah says his movements are incredible and look like a dance. Annoyed, Spencer complains that he's only good at running away and calls him a bastard. Hearing the taunt, Belle stops moving and faces his opponent head-on. With a smile, he says that's fine and that he won't dodge anymore. Everyone is stunned by his declaration, not understanding what he's going to do. With a defiant look, he says he's curious to see that popsicle. Spencer curses him, saying he's dumber than he looks. Accepting the challenge, he warns that he'll freeze him completely with his power. He then lashes out with his whip at full force, aiming for Belle's body. With a smirk, Belle deflects the whip with a kick and traps it with his legs. Startled by the scene, Sarah screams her brother's name, worried about the fight. With the whip trapped, the ice begins to creep up Belle's legs. He then shatters the ice with his hands and breaks free from the trap. With a smile, Spencer says he can't move now and that he will attack. But Belle asks if that was all he could do to stop him. Smiling, he announces that now it's his turn to attack in this battle. Confused, Spencer stares at him, not knowing what's coming next. Shouting the name Ragnarok, he prepares to summon his second divine weapon. With the sheath at his waist, he concentrates on drawing the new weapon. Drawing the pistol, he completely shatters the ice that held him to the ground. Shocked, Spencer shouts, asking how he can have a second divine weapon. Then Belle yells to release the mana, concentrating all his power into the pistol. With a powerful shot, he melts the ice and completely frees himself from the trap. Now he says he's free to move as he pleases in the fight. Stunned, Jessica says it's not possible, unable to believe what she just saw. She wonders how he can use 2 armaments and already have attributes. With the pistol in hand, Belle announces that it's time for Spencer's punishment. He then fires a huge fireball toward his opponent. Seeing the attack, Spencer screams in fear and prepares to defend himself from the fire. With his whip, he creates a wall of ice to shield himself from the fireball. The wall of ice completely protects him from the attack, keeping him safe for now. Laughing, he mocks the attack and challenges him to get through his thick ice. With a smirk, Belle replies that it will be very easy. Aiming the weapon again, he fires a concentrated and powerful beam of fire. The beam pierces through the ice with ease, heading straight for Spencer. Unable to react, Spencer just watches the attack approach his body. The attack hits him head-on, burning his body and throwing him far back. Screaming in pain, he flies backward and tumbles to the ground from the impact. Defeated, he lies on the ground, unable to get up to continue the fight. Shocked, Jessica realizes he's strong enough to defeat a D rank. Afraid, she understands that, as an E rank, she stands no chance against him. Taking a step forward, he slowly approaches his older sister. He then firmly warns that the game is over for everyone. Startled, she extends her hand in a panic as he approaches. Aiming her weapon, Jessica screams desperately for him to stay far away, but he stands still, taking the shots she fires without moving. Screaming again, she keeps telling him to stay away from her and Spencer. In her panic, she stumbles backward and falls to the ground in shock. Getting closer, he stops right in front of her, still on the ground. Lying on the grass, she looks up at him, unable to get up, paralyzed by the situation. His shadow then completely covers her, making it impossible to see his face. With an intimidating glare, he warns her to never mess with Sarah again. Unable to react, she stares at him, her face grazed by a stray shot. After a scream, she gets up and runs away desperately. Seeing that the danger has passed, Sarah runs towards him to hug him. Jumping into his arms, she hugs him tightly, calling out for her brother. Worried, she asks if he's okay, and if the whip didn't hurt him. Smiling, he says he will become the strongest for her, making her happy and proud. She then remembers the crown and offers him the one she made for herself. Placing the crown on him, she thanks him for always being there to protect her. Looking at the crown, he feels happy with his sister's gift. With a smile, he says that one day the entire nation will revere this gift, but he knows there are still many problems to solve with his siblings. With the crown on his head, he understands what he needs to do to change everything. His top priority is to enter the training academy to get stronger. The scene changes to the Duke in a training field, holding his sword. With a smile, he recalls the determination he saw in his son's eyes. He then tosses a leaf into the air, preparing for a swift strike. With a single sword stroke, he cuts the leaf into 3 perfect pieces. The pieces of the leaf fall slowly to the ground as he watches. As he turns, he finds Belle standing right behind him, watching the training. Turning to his son, the Duke asks what he wants at this moment. With a serious look, Belle says he would like to ask for an important permission. Curious, his father wants to know what this permission he's asking for is. Kneeling as a sign of respect, he prepares to make his request. Galleon then looks at him in silence, waiting for him to finally reveal the reason. Then he asks him to please let him take the C rank exam. Kneeling on the grass, Belle confirms that he does indeed wish to take the proposed test. Stating his objective, he says he wants to serve the king as a member of the family. In exchange for their status, the family must complete tasks like protecting important people. To climb the ranks, the fastest way is to complete these dangerous missions. And to participate in these missions, he explains that he needs a higher rank. Back in the present, Galleon acknowledges that Belle truly seems full of ambition. However, he warns that it's still too early for him to attempt something so great. According to him, most need to be full-fledged paladins to achieve a C rank. Furthermore, he points out that Belle is just a newly awakened F rank. Suggesting a path, Galleon tells him to start with the E rank exam first. At this, Belle reveals a giant fang and asks if that changes his opinion. Completely shocked, Galleon recognizes the item as the Fang of a Fenrir. Utterly confused, he asks Belle how he managed to get that item. In response, Galleon extends his hand and begins to summon one of his items. Suddenly, a giant mace appears in front of Belle, offered by Galleon. In focus, the giant mace that Galleon summoned appears in full detail. Holding the weapon, Belle comments that it was difficult, but he managed to discipline the creature. Surprised, Galleon wonders aloud if the boy can use attributes. Realizing his strength, Galleon concludes that Belle can indeed face the challenge. Finally, he allows Belle to take the exam, but adds that there is one condition. Galleon then warns the boy not to dare disappoint him in any way. With a determined look, Belle assures him that he won't be disappointed. The scene changes. Belle arrives at the exam location and notices many candidates. 2 men comment that C rank is a major hurdle and that people can die. Just then, they look back and notice Belle's presence among them. Astonished, they look down and question the presence of a child. Arriving at the counter, Belle politely asks if this is the event's reception desk. The receptionist then asks who he is and if he's with his parents. He states directly that he'd like to take the exam, completely surprising the girl. Awkwardly, she apologizes and tells him to come back when he's older. He asks them not to treat him like a child, as he is also a paladin. Even so, the receptionist asks him to stop his paladin game. Suddenly arriving, a young man says that children shouldn't be here and tells him to leave. With an irritated expression, Belle glares at the young man who just interrupted him. At that moment, some people in the crowd seem to recognize the newcomer immediately. They identify him as Lennox Bright, the strongest D-rank paladin. It's said that his divine armament strikes 8 times with a single move. In awe, one of the candidates shouts that he's actually a huge fan of his. With a smile, Lennox warns that to aim for C rank, you need to be like him. While everyone is talking, Belle just observes the famous D-rank paladin. Then, Lennox turns to Bell and asks if he has a divine armament. Answering yes, Bell reveals the armament hanging from his waist. Upon seeing it, Lennox can't help but start laughing at the boy. He then starts laughing loudly, asking what that is and calling it junk. Mocking him as well, people in the crowd comment on the existence of useless armaments. Lennox says he doesn't care if an ignorant kid like him wants to die here, but he complains that Bell's participation in the exam would make them look like equals. Telling him to get lost, Lennox says he should run back to his mommy. Ignoring the taunt, Belle demands that the receptionist register him for the exam immediately. Surprised, she asks if he's serious, and he confirms his decision. She then explains that one must be D rank or have a recommendation to enter. Showing the letter, Belle says he can participate, and the woman confirms the rule. As she opens the envelope, she is completely shocked by what's written on the paper. Reading the contents, she realizes the letter is from Duke Galleon Catastrophe himself. She then wonders if this boy could be the Duke's own son. The scene changes. Belle and the other candidates gather in the exam arena. The explanation of how the C-rank exam will work then begins. Pointing to a pillar, the instructor says they will go to an underground dungeon. Inside, the mission is to retrieve the Jewel of Light from the 5th floor within 5 hours. Finishing the explanation, he reveals that there are only 3 of these jewels in total. Announcing the final rule, the instructor shouts that only 3 people will be promoted. With a confident smile, Lennox guarantees that he will definitely be one of those who pass. Turning to the crowd, Lennox shows off while the other candidates just watch him. At this, the instructor asks if everyone there is ready for the test to begin. At the signal, all candidates immediately run towards the teleportation portal. When it's his turn, Bell extends his hand towards the transport pillar. The pillar then activates as he approaches to be teleported. As he is transported, he is pulled into the pillar at an extremely high speed. After the teleportation, he lands on his feet inside the underground dungeon. He then says that everyone was sent to different places on the 1st floor. Walking through the cave, he believes that 5 hours will be more than enough. With a smile, he decides it would be a waste not to take full advantage of this chance. Inside the dungeon are many monsters. Defeating them strengthens a paladin's mana. Just then, Bell finally reveals that his divine armament was actually a sword. Wielding his new sword, he declares he will hunt every single one of them down. Elsewhere in the dungeon, a group of candidates struggles against lizard monsters. During the attack, one of the monsters strikes a candidate squarely with its spear. With a sinister smile, the creature faces the group, who seem to be in trouble. Retreating, the other 2 candidates can't hide their nervousness about the situation, but suddenly Lennox appears, defeating the monsters with a single spinning strike. After eliminating the threat, he looks toward the group he just saved. Impressed, they shout that Lennox is the best and that he's amazing. Without stopping, Lennox pushes forward, defeating more monsters that appear in his path. Then he declares that he's not just some nobody like the rest of them, gripping his weapon. Following behind, they admit it's frustrating, but thank the young man for his help. Now in the lead, he tells them to get a good look at what he can do. With a smirk, he comments that the weak are only good for lazing around. Further ahead, the trio finds a hallway that leads to a large door. Standing in front of the door, Lennox says that this must be the final room. Placing his hand on the door, he wonders if it'll be fun and starts to push. Upon opening the door, they are startled by the number of D-rank monsters. Focusing on the objective, he points out that the jewels are on a pedestal on the other side. Just then, one of the stone golem's feet takes a step toward them. The monster then slowly advances toward the group, ready for its first attack. Saying he'll cut them to pieces, he prepares to start the fight. Charging forward with his sword, he unleashes several strikes against the stone golem. But to his surprise, the monster proves to be very resilient, and he cries out in shock. In response, the golem prepares a powerful punch to counter the blow. Scoring a direct hit, the monster's fist collides with Lennox's sword. The force of the impact sends him flying, and he crashes to the ground. Still on the ground, he wonders why his attacks aren't working. Seeing this, his companions are also surprised by the creature's strength. While Lennox is down, the other monsters decide to attack the rest of the group. With no time to waste, one of his companions raises his mace to defend himself. With a solid strike, he hits one of the slime creatures right in the head. Shouting in frustration, he realizes that physical attacks don't work on that creature. Using a torch, the other candidate complains that she can't hit the monster. In the midst of total chaos, the entire group finds themselves completely cornered by the monsters. Still on the ground, Lennox realizes that this is the final test of the exam. He then understands that each monster was designed to nullify their divine weapons. Unable to react, the golem slowly approaches to crush him against the ground. Closing his eyes in despair, he is certain he's going to die right there. Suddenly, Bell appears and destroys the stone golem with a single blow. At that, Lennox opens his eyes, unable to understand what just happened. Looking at Lennox, Bell remarks that it was a close call and he almost arrived too late. With his foot on the golem's head, he says he had fun hunting in there. Completely shocked, Lennox shouts the nickname he gave the boy earlier. Seeing this, the slime creature tries to flee as quickly as possible. Bell then concentrates his energy and materializes an item in the palm of his hand. Offering the sword, Bell tells him to use the weapon. Seeing this, Lennox shouts in amazement, asking if his divine armament transformed. Without wasting time, Bell charges forward and cuts down the slime creature in his path. Looking up, he faces the last monster flying over the room. Then Bell summons a second weapon and calls it by the name Ragnarok. With a perfect shot, he hits the monster in midair and brings it down. Shocked, the other candidates wonder who he is, remembering the weapon was just a sheath. Lennox doesn't understand either, questioning why the boy has multiple divine weapons. On top of that, Bell wields them with a skill that impresses everyone there. Announcing his time is running out, he decides to end the fight for good. Watching the scene, Lennox says it's unbelievable that he's just a kid. Using his two weapons, Bell finally defeats all the remaining monsters in the room. Having cleared the path, he approaches the pedestal where the jewels are. There, right in front of him, he finally finds the coveted jewels of light. Running up to him, the other candidates congratulate him and ask about his weapons. Ignoring their praise, Bell just turns his head to the side. Looking at Lennox, one of the candidates calls him a big, pompous loser. Admitting their mistake, they say that Lennox is weak compared to the boy Bell. With nothing to say, Lennox just stands there with a downcast expression. Approaching the pedestal, they celebrate that the three of them will now become C rank. But Bell raises his giant mace and shouts the weapon's name, Mjolnir. Two jewels remain, still intact on the pedestal before them all. Raising the weapon high, he prepares to strike the pedestal again. With a powerful blow, he completely destroys the remaining jewels. Not understanding it all, the other two candidates scream in despair at the scene. Seeing the wreckage, they ask why he did that and broke the jewels. Holding the last jewel, Bell says there's still one left and tells them to take it. Then he calls them useless parasites who only know how to leech off others. Turning to Lennox, he calls him trash, who takes pleasure in mocking others. Shouting at everyone, he says they are not worthy of calling themselves knights. In complete silence, the trio just listens to the harsh words spoken by Bell. Standing in the room, the four candidates face the final result of the challenge. With his head down, Lennox thanks Bell for making him realize his own arrogance. But lifting his face, he declares with determination that this will not be his end. That honesty and ambition end up surprising Bell, who just watches him in silence. Turning his back, Bell tells them they'll meet again someday and walks away. Once outside, he celebrates that he's finally reached C rank. Looking at his hand, he realizes his mana has grown a lot from hunting the monsters. With his new power, his goal now is to gain status to protect Sarah. Changing scenes, the grand mansion of the Catastrophe family is shown on a clear day. Inside, Galleon is in the middle of a serious meeting with two paladins. One of them understands the topic is about karma, the paladins who want to overthrow Media. Galleon explains that 3 B-rank paladins are leading an attack against their kingdom. At that point, one of the men reports that Duke Schreibe has already lost a small unit. According to rumors, the enemies have enhanced their weapons with a forbidden grimoire called Pentagram. Understanding the gravity of the situation, one of them asks if that's why they were summoned. With a serious look, Galleon states that they need to completely eradicate the Karma group. Then, one of the men at the meeting asks about the whereabouts of Jin Sama. Suddenly, the grimoire appears on the table as a voice questions their conversation. Everyone in the room looks at the book with expressions of total surprise. Then a man enters and announces that the said organization has been completely annihilated. With a smile, he reveals he was responsible and calls himself the next Duke. In another part of the mansion, Sarah's day begins quite lonely. Just then, a maid places a tray with a very simple meal on the table. Announcing that the food is served, she formally addresses the young lady. Being served in her room, Sarah watches the maid approach her table. She thanks her with a smile, being very polite to the maid. After serving the meal, the maid bows and leaves the room. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she watches the bedroom door close. On the table, the meal consists of just a piece of bread and a cup. She then stares at the food with a very disheartened expression. Suddenly, the door opens and Bell announces he's back for Sarah. With a smile on his face, he enters the room carrying a large box. A huge smile spreading across her face, Sarah calls him brother, overjoyed to see him. Running up to him, she asks where he's been, worried about his disappearance. To make up for it, he reveals the treats he brought for them to eat together. As he lays out the food, Sarah perks up at the sight of an apple pie. With a big smile, She thanks her brother and invites him to eat with her. Smiling, he thinks she's cute, but reminds himself it's not the time to admire her. On the table, the food is the same as always because of the servants. Watching her eat, he decides he needs to improve her living conditions urgently. Back in the meeting room, the main hall is shown once again. Seated at the table, Galleon comments that he can't believe Jin defeated Karma alone. This means, he says, that Jin, the eldest son, has reached A rank. Impressed, the other two men comment that Jin is really on another level. Meanwhile, Jin just leans back in his chair, looking bored with the whole conversation. Lifting his head, he asks his father if the meeting is over. Galleon then replies that it's not, as the king has entrusted him with another task. Revealing the new mission, he explains they must protect Princess Rika on her journey. At this, one of the paladins asks if the royal guards aren't enough. In response, Razor explains they were worried about Karma, after all. Suggesting a route, one of them advises that the Ricotta Pass is safer. Stepping forward, he enters the meeting room abruptly. Shouting loudly, he asks everyone there to wait a minute. Stopping before the table, he interrupts the conversation of everyone present. Surprised by his arrival, the two men recognize him as Bel-sama. Galleon looks at him from the head of the table with a slight smile. Speaking calmly, he says it seems his exam is finally over. Confirming his success, Bel shows his license and announces he is now a C rank. The two paladins shout in shock, asking how he achieved that so young. Then Galleon asks why he decided to interrupt the meeting so suddenly. Replying directly, he says he'd like to advise on another route for the journey. One of the paladins glares at him with disdain, questioning the word advise coming from him. Explaining further, he warns that the path has bandits and takes 3 days. His suggestion is that it would be better to take a shortcut through the monster plains. Protesting, one of the men shouts that the place is a nest of monsters. In response, Bel begins to explain that the monsters living there are... Explaining, he says that death chimeras and shadow horrors live there. Since both are nocturnal, he assures them that passing through during the day would be quite safe. Furthermore, he claims it would only take 1 day to reach their destination. One of the paladins awkwardly agrees, admitting his analysis is correct. At this, Galleon realizes that Bel is smart and knows a lot about monsters. After presenting his plan, he asks for the opinion of everyone at the table. Taking responsibility, he says he wants to take the princess by the safest route. While Galleon ponders, Jin and Razor just watch the scene in complete silence. But suddenly Jin calls out to him, interrupting the conversation between him and Galleon. Surprised, Bel turns to face his older brother who just interfered. Then Jin angrily asks how he dares to speak, calling him a mutt. Under his pressure, the flower in the vase on the table withers and dies instantly. Terrified, the other two paladins are left speechless by that display of power. Feeling the intimidation, Bel remembers that his brother is something else entirely. He then clenches his fist tightly, enduring his brother's pressure. Stating he's serious, he faces his brother with complete determination in his eyes. Holding his sword, he promises to take the princess to safety, no matter who he faces. With a smirk, Jin challenges him, asking if that promise includes him too. Bel then responds with conviction that a knight always keeps his word. Suddenly, Razor interrupts the conversation and yells at him to be quiet immediately. Annoyed, he accuses Bel, saying his words were blasphemy against Jin. Facing the man, Bel recognizes him as Razor, a high B-rank paladin. Finding the situation interesting, Jin orders Razor to test the boy's strength. Immediately, Razor summons his 2 staffs and prepares for the coming fight. Crossing his weapons, he accepts his master's order with complete readiness. Vowing to teach him a lesson, he says that the son of a concubine dares to challenge them. Without wasting any more time, he charges toward Bel to attack. From a distance, Razor launches a swift strike that crosses the entire room. Getting very close, he unleashes a direct attack with his 2 staffs. Surprised by the speed, Bel braces for the impact of the imminent attack. Holding firm, Bel stops Razor's powerful attack using only his sword. Completely shocked, Razor can't believe the boy managed to defend his blow. Meanwhile, Jin just lets out a slight smirk, finding it all very interesting. Straining hard, Bel continues to hold back Razor's attack with great difficulty. Suddenly, Galleon slams the table and yells for them to stop. Turning his head, Bel looks toward Galleon, who just interrupted them. Then Galleon announces to everyone that he will entrust this important task to Bel. Unable to believe what he's heard, Razor asks if his lord is serious. Explaining his decision, Galleon says that without Karma, this is the perfect mission. Bowing, Bel thanks him and promises he won't disappoint him in any way. With his arms crossed, Jin just watches his father's decision in silence. At this, a malicious smile appears on Jin's face as he watches things unfold. Changing scenes. the imposing royal palace appears on the city's horizon. Now in front of the castle, Belle observes the place for the first time. Moving forward, he walks toward the guarded gate. Upon reaching the gate, the guards stop him and tell him he cannot enter. Showing his license, he introduces himself as Belle, here to escort the princess. Surprised, the guards wonder how a child can be a C rank. After the identification, the gate opens and they finally let him pass. As he passes, one of the guards doubts he can protect Her Highness. Without showing any reaction, he just listens to what the guard said. Further ahead, he spots the princess next to the carriage with her servants. At this, the princess comments that he is a rather cute bodyguard to look at. With an unfriendly expression, she informs him that she won't be needing him. The scene changes, revealing another castle on top of a great mountain. In a throne room, a man asks if Princess Rika has already departed. Kneeling, a masked man confirms that yes, she appears to have left. Reporting on her escort, he warns that she has guards and also Belle. Recognizing the name, the man on the throne says that Belle is the youngest son. He then warns him not to let his guard down around the talented boy. Giving him permission to act, he says the situation may call for it. Showing his claws, the masked man assures him that he needn't worry. With a smile, he states that assassination is his specialty after all. Meanwhile, the princess's carriage finally departs from inside the castle. Inside, Belle and the princess travel in silence, facing each other. His mission is to protect Princess Rika during the ceremony in Arsha. He then focuses, knowing he can't fail because of Sira. Looking out the window, the princess comments that she doesn't feel welcome there. With some hesitation, Belle asks why she said he wasn't necessary. The carriage continues on its way, swaying slightly during the journey. Explaining her position, she says she simply doesn't want to depend on anyone. With her arms crossed, she says she has her own weapon and doesn't need protection. Responding with a simple, "Okay," he is left unsure of what to say. During the journey, she continues to look out the window with a very serious expression. Passing through a town, they see a clown performing for the children. With her eyes fixed on the scene, she moves closer to the window for a better look. With a big smile, she leans out the window to watch the performance. Watching her, he can't help but let a small smile form on his lips. Turning to him, she questions him, not understanding the reason for his smile. He then apologizes and explains that she reminded him of his sister. Belle then comments that his sister would have reacted the same way. Curious, she asks if he gets along with his sister, and he says yes. He explains that because she's young, they play a lot of different games together. Looking away, she says she has many siblings but doesn't trust them. He then wonders if her problem is a succession conflict. With a slight smile, he comments that her situation is similar to his. Explaining his life, he says that his older brothers always terrorize them. She just listens to what he's saying in complete silence. Telling her he understands, he offers to help if anything should happen. But she refuses his help, saying she doesn't want to depend on someone like him. Telling him not to speak as if he knows her, she accuses him of being disrespectful. Meanwhile, a group of hooded men hides among the trees. Arriving at their destination, they spot a large castle in the darkness. The coachman then announces that they've arrived in a day, as planned. Getting out of the carriage, the princess complains that long journeys really tire her out. Suddenly, the castle's large gate begins to open for them. Welcoming them, a group of knights calls her by name and salutes her. Confused, she asks the blonde knight who he is exactly. With a smile, he introduces himself as Peter Fred, one of the guard knights. Trying to remember, Belle says he's heard the name Peter Fred before. He also finds it strange that they're being greeted outside the city. Meanwhile, the hooded group prepares to attack in the darkness. Sitting in a tree, one of them receives a dagger and gets ready to act. Just then, the princess's group is surrounded by the knights and also the servants. Noting their numbers, he realizes that despite the guards, something is wrong. Suddenly, one of the hooded men throws a dagger at the princess. Understanding the plan, Belle realizes she's an easier target there. Without hesitation, he uses his scabbard to deflect the dagger and protect the princess. Surprised, the princess and her servants are unable to react to the sudden attack. Under the moonlight, one of the men shouts, announcing an enemy attack. Then, a shower of daggers is launched towards Belle and the princess. Seeing how many there are, he realizes the situation is bad and grows concerned. Shouting at the enemies, Peter charges forward with his sword to protect everyone. Drawing their weapons, Peter and the princess prepare for the coming fight. With a furious look, Peter shouts that he won't let anyone touch the princess. Observing the defense, Belle notes that he deflected the knives and seems to be B rank. Seeing the strength of the knights, the assassins decide to flee and regroup. The princess then orders the Knights of Media to capture all the assassins. Telling her to trust him, Belle pulls her away from the danger. As she runs, the princess looks back at the fight they left behind. Under the moonlight, they flee in search of a safer place. Leading her to a room, Peter says she's safe, but she objects. Suddenly, the guard who offered to protect her is fatally wounded in the neck. Shocked, the princess watches the guard's lifeless body fall to the the floor. Holding a dagger, Peter reveals himself as the true traitor of the group. In disbelief, the princess stares at the knight who just killed her guard. Looking at the dagger, he comments on the dead guard's empty promise. With a sinister smile, he says that life didn't seem to be worth much. Terrified, the princess asks what he's doing, receiving only a mumble in reply. With a sinister smile, he reveals his true intention is to assassinate her. Horrified, the princess backs away and falls to the floor, completely defenseless. Then Peter slowly approaches her, cornering her against the bedroom wall. Trying to summon her weapon, she realizes her hand won't stop shaking. Bidding her farewell, he says goodbye to his cute princess with a smile. In complete desperation, she prays for someone to appear and save her. Suddenly, one of the assassins breaks through the window and invades the room. Surprised by the intrusion, Peter turns to see what's happening, but the assassin is already on the floor, completely defeated upon entry. Just then, Belle appears in the broken window, standing in the moonlight. Turning towards the entrance, the princess stares at her savior with a shocked expression. Apologizing, he tells the princess that he's a little late. Apologizing for the delay, he formally introduces himself to Princess Rika-sama. Still on the floor, she recognizes him and softly calls his name. Taking a step into the room, he enters in silence. With a confident smile, he tells her to leave the rest to him. Irritated, Peter complains that he thought all the guards had taken the bait. Praising his courage, he asks if the boy thinks he can face him. Belle then confirms, saying he finally managed to remember who he was. Not understanding a thing, Peter stares at him with an expression of total confusion. Revealing his identity, he calls him Von Wriggle, his real name. Completely shocked, Peter can't hide his surprise at the boy's revelation. Continuing his explanation, he describes the divine armament of thunder darts. At that, he starts listing the targets Peter has attacked so far. Finishing the list, he mentions Marquess Reisenbart as the last of the victims. Furious, Peter screams, asking how the hell he knows all these things. Turns out he was the one who captured him, but that was in his past life. Taking a step forward, he warns that there's no way for him to explain himself. Standing in the middle of the room, Peter stares at the boy with a defiant look. With a smirk, he simply says he finds the situation interesting. Then he asks if a C rank can really defeat a powerful B rank. In his mind, Belle admits that a B rank would be too much for him right now, but with a smile, he assures that if the opponent is him, there's no problem. Annoyed, Peter shows his claws and tells him not to get cocky. Predicting his moves, Belle knows he'll start with throwing weapons. At that moment, Peter unleashes a barrage of sharp blades at the boy. Creating several clones, Belle prepares to intercept all the projectiles at once. Knowing the tactic, he predicts Peter will charge forward right after. As expected, Peter attacks with a diagonal slash coming from his right. Shocked, Peter yells, not understanding how the boy predicted his move perfectly. Belle then anticipates he'll circle behind to strike. Preparing a counterattack, he lowers his hand for the next move in the fight. Dodging the attack, Belle warns that he knows every single one of his moves. Irritated, Peter wonders how the boy can keep up with his absurd speed. With a serious look, he tells him to surrender if he wants to stay alive. Standing in the shadows, Peter refuses to accept defeat so easily. In a fit of rage, he curses Belle and lunges at him. Belle then notices that his anger makes his attacks simpler. With a predictable pattern, Peter attacks with a sequence of blade strikes. Without difficulty, Belle dodges all the attacks, predicting each move in advance. Impressed, the princess says Belle is amazing for fighting so effortlessly. As they trade blows, Belle's sword collides with Peter's dagger. Watching the fight, the princess laments that she was all talk. At that, she clutches the ring on her finger and decides to try and help. Taking advantage of an opening, Belle asks if this is finally over and counterattacks. With a precise strike, he hits Peter's arm squarely. Retreating, Peter prepares for his next move, even though he's injured. Thinking, Peter realizes the boy is seeing all his movements. He then remembers the warning not to let his guard down with the boy. Deciding to go all out, he says it's time to use his trump card. Belle then realizes it's the unique ability of B-rank paladins. With his sword in hand, he guarantees he can handle him as he is, but Peter questions him and pulls out a small vial he had with him. With a swift movement, he opens the cap of the vial he was holding. Seeing it, Belle shouts in shock as he recognizes the item he took. Revealing its name, he drinks the liquid, the tears of the Dragon King. After drinking it, he throws the empty vial on the floor. Suddenly, his body begins to react violently to the potion he ingested. Belle then realizes he's in trouble because of that super rare item. Swearing revenge, Peter yells that he'll regret not killing him. With his hands on the floor, he unleashes all his power at once. Shooting out in all directions, a barrage of lightning is launched at Belle. With his eyes focused, he prepares for his opponent's imminent attack. Surrounded by lightning darts, he stands firm in the center of the room. At that moment, One of his enemy's blades glows intensely with accumulated energy. With a smile, Peter yells for him to take the incoming attack. Then Peter traps him inside a lightning cage, using his special ability. Floating, Belle realizes his body is being lifted by the technique's magnetism. Sitting on the floor, the princess shouts Belle's name, worried about the situation. Without hesitation, Belle summons his shield, calling it by the name Achilles in response. Trying to break free, he uses the shield to create a strong gust of wind inside, but he notices the wind just circulates within the barrier with no effect. With a malicious smile, Peter invokes the name of his next ability, the Thunderbird. Concentrating energy, one of his lightning darts begins to glow even brighter. Suddenly, all the darts fly toward him, creating a massive explosion. Caught in the blast, Belle screams in pain as he's electrocuted by the powerful attack. Laughing at the scene, Peter promises not to worry and that it will be quick. Even while being electrocuted, he refuses to die in that place no matter what. Suddenly, a volley of energy arrows appears to intercept the attack. Each of the arrows hits the darts dead on, neutralizing the imminent threat. With the cage dispelled, Belle is freed, and Peter shouts in shock at the scene. Turning around, he glares at the person who interrupted him with intense anger. Holding a bow, the princess stares him down, and he immediately starts cursing at her. Inspired by his sacrifice, she decides she can't be scared anymore. With a distorted face, Peter curses her again, completely out of his mind. Then he leaps toward her, ready to attack with everything he has. Seeing his advance, the princess is completely frozen, unable to react, but Belle lands in front of her and thanks Her Highness for the help. At that, Peter realizes the tables have turned, and that he's the one in trouble now. Advancing quickly, Belle rushes past him and hits him with a fatal slash. Caught by surprise, Peter's eyes turn white and he starts spitting. With a serious face, Belle stares at his defeated opponent after the final blow. Now on the floor, Peter is watched by Belle after being defeated in the fight. With a smile, he turns to the princess and asks if she's hurt. Without answering, the princess just looks at him with a worried expression. Taking a step forward, she approaches him to see how he is. Touching his face, she calls him an idiot and says he's the one who's hurt. With her head down, she apologizes for getting him involved in her conflict. Saying it was splendid, he praises the strength she showed in the fight. With a smile, she replies that she's still not as strong as he is. Thanking him for everything, she promises to help him if he ever needs it. On his knees, he thanks Her Highness for the promise she just made. With a slight smile, she watches him closely with a gentle gaze. Taking off her ring, she says she wants him to have it. Handing it to him, she says it's a token of gratitude and friendship. Surprised, he stares at the ring in his hand, unable to believe what he's received. With all its details, the ring shines brightly in the boy's hand. The scene opens on the family estate, showing the front of the castle. Inside, Galleon welcomes Belle, who kneels. He praises Belle, saying he protected the princess very well. Still kneeling, Belle confirms he has completed the task he was given. Just then, Galleon's attention is drawn to something in his hand. Looking closely, he identifies the object as Solomon's ring. Belle then explains that he received the ring from the princess as a token of her trust. As a royal treasure, that ring possesses a very special mana. Galleon remains silent, just stroking his long white beard. After a moment of thought, he announces he will enroll Belle at Athena. Wide-eyed, Belle repeats the name Athena, questioning the decision. That academy is an elite institute only for noble families. Normally, the children of the Catastrophe family are taught by private tutors, but there is a tradition where candidates for leadership attend the academy. Realizing what this means, Belle stands frozen with a fixed stare. Belle agrees, saying he will do as he wishes. Before leaving the office, he calls out to the Duke one more time. Turning his head, Galleon asks what it is this time. Standing in the middle of the room, Belle prepares to speak. He then says he would like to make one last request. In another scene, the doors to a large bedroom open. Running inside, Sarah celebrates, saying the place is amazing. She then asks Belle if this is really her room. Without waiting for an answer, she happily throws herself onto the bed. He confirms their father gave them permission to move. Lying down, she shouts that she's very happy with the news, but suddenly she notices something different about her brother's hand. Pointing at him, she asks what happened to his hand. As she tends to his wound, he explains he got hurt at work. Seeing the wound, she says that it must hurt a lot. With her arms raised, Sarah shouts for the pain to go away. Belle smiles, thanking her, and saying he feels much better now. Stroking her hair, he reassures her with a gentle smile. Then his gaze turns serious as he focuses on the future. Remembering the vision, he knows his home will be destroyed in 5 years. Sarah would be in danger again because of that mysterious man. For this reason, he concludes that he must become the heir. Changing scenes, Razor enters a room where Jin is painting. He kneels on the floor, respectfully calling Jin's name. But Jin doesn't answer, keeping his full focus on the painting. Up close, the canvas shows a painting of a mountain. Razor then informs him that it's been decided Bell will go to Athena. He suggests they eliminate Bell, now a competitor for the position of heir. Jin interrupts him, simply saying to leave the boy alone. After speaking, he places his paint palette on the table, stating that Bell is no threat. Jin dismisses Razor's concern. He then says that watching the boy grow stronger could be advantageous. In the background, the paint on his canvas seems to be slowly dripping. Touching the canvas, he begins to say what his favorite thing is. Standing there, Razor breaks into a cold sweat as he listens to his words. He continues speaking, now with a very strange smile on his face. He finishes by saying it's destroying things after they're completed. With his head bowed, Razor simply agrees to do as he wishes. Leaving the room, he walks down the hall, thinking this is all too risky. He remembers that Bell, despite his youth, has already defeated a B-rank paladin. Determined, he decides he must attack the boy as a precaution. Elsewhere, Bell is training to acquire advanced paladin skills. He needs to master this before enrolling at Athena Academy, but to do that, he'll need to hunt a large number of monsters. Just then, a silhouette appears at the entrance to the courtyard. Turning his head, he notices a silhouette approaching. Entering the courtyard, Razor walks toward where Bell is training. Getting closer, he calls the boy's name with a serious expression. Bell recognizes him immediately, asking what he's doing there. Questioning the reason for the visit, he asks what the assistant wants. Unexpectedly, Razor apologizes for what happened between them the other day. He explains it was rude of him to point his blade at one of the Duke's sons. Surprised by this attitude, Bell tells him not to worry about it. Bowing, Razor thanks him for his understanding and kindness. He then says he has something else to discuss with Bell. Holding his weapon, he prepares to make his proposal. He invites Bell to join him on a subjugation mission. Turning his head, Bell questions if he really heard the word mission. Razor explains that Jin and the other paladins already have other assignments. He finishes by saying he was impressed and would like his help. He stares at Razor, not giving an immediate answer to the invitation. Gripping his sword, he finally says he accepts the proposal. Razor bows slightly, thanking him profusely for his help. Turning away, he reveals a completely different smile than before. Then Bell curiously asks where they are going. The answer is they are going to a remote location called Ithaca. Hearing the name, Bell tries to remember where he's heard it before. He then breaks into a smile, as that place is a great opportunity. Ambrosia is said to permanently increase mana. In a carriage, the two travel together to their mission's destination. Sitting there, Bell thinks about getting the item to reach B rank. He knows the chance of obtaining Ambrosia is extremely rare. To get the item, he needs to enter a secret dungeon. Looking out the window, he sees that one of those dungeons has appeared. As they get closer, they spot the city of Ithaca on the horizon. By nightfall, the two arrive and walk through the city streets. Sitting at a table, Razor decides to go over the plan one more time. He then reveals that their task is to defeat the terrible Leviathans. Razor confirms there are several C-rank monsters they need to eliminate. Getting up, he announces they will start tomorrow after they rest. Bell agrees, saying he's also heading to his room. As Bell walks up the stairs, Razor watches him from below in silence. With a smile on his face, he thinks that the boy has no idea what awaits him. He plans to make it all look like an accident during tomorrow's mission. With a smirk, he says it'll be easy to eliminate a C-rank boy. Outside, the full moon illuminates the inn where they are staying. Believing Razor is asleep, Bell opens the window to leave his room. He then summons his divine weapon, the powerful shield named Achilles. Using his magic, he creates a current of wind around him. Placing his foot on the shield, he gets ready to fly. Leaving through the window, he shoots off into the night toward the forest. Flying over the darkness, he approaches a place only he knows. He moves at high speed, unnoticed by anyone. Arriving at his destination, he finally lands on the dark forest floor. He then dispels the shield, which vanishes in a puff of smoke. Before him, a massive tree hides the entrance to the secret dungeon. Very carefully, he enters the opening between the giant roots. Inside, he finds the glowing portal that leads to the dungeon. With a smile, he confirms that he's finally found the dungeon's portal. Divided by color, each portal represents a different difficulty rank. Standing before the portal, he sees its color indicates a B-rank dungeon. By completing the challenge, he knows he can receive a corresponding ambrosia. Looking at the portal, he expects a great increase in his mana from this. But to clear the dungeon, he needs to defeat the final boss first. Remembering his past life, his master stopped him from entering because he was too weak. Taking a step forward, he knows this won't be an easy task. With a determined look, he tells himself he can't back down now. He then reaches out and touches the portal's barrier. To change Sarah's future, he crosses through the portal without hesitation. Now, inside the dungeon, he runs down a long stone corridor. Drawing his sword, he prepares for the first enemy. In front of him, a headless knight appears ready to fight. Charging at high speed, the knight prepares its first strike. Unleashing a horizontal slash, the knight rushes at Bell. Holding firm, he intercepts the knight's blow with his sword. Then, he prepares to counter, raising his sword with force. His strike comes down and hits the opponent's armor squarely. The impact throws him back, sending him leaping away. He grits his teeth, preparing a new tactic. Stretching his hand forward, he activates another ability. He then summons a giant hammer and grips it tightly. Leaping at the enemy, he brings the hammer down with all his might, but the knight stands still, taking no visible damage. He realizes his physical attacks can't even scratch the armor. Seeing the situation, he jumps back, creating more distance. Wielding his sword, he concentrates for a different kind of attack. He then decides to attack with magic, spinning his body for the strike. The slash hits the knight's armor dead on. Even with the blow, the knight's armor remains completely intact. Sweating, he realizes the monster must be at least S rank. Charging again, the knight forces Bell to block the strike with difficulty. At a clear disadvantage, he needs to quickly think of a new plan of attack. Looking at the opponent's chest plate, he believes he's found its weakness. Suddenly, a different kind of energy starts to form in his hand. Believing fire will work, he runs toward the enemy. He then summons his other divine weapon, a pistol called Ragnarok. Aiming the gun, he starts a countdown from 3. Seeing the threat, the knight rushes to attack him with all its might. Keeping his aim steady, Bell continues the countdown, now saying 2. As he gets to 1, the knight draws closer and closer. Raising its sword, the enemy prepares for the final blow. At the last second, he yells, "Now!" and pulls the trigger. From the barrel of the gun, a powerful shot is fired at the knight. Hitting the knight dead on, the shot goes straight through it. He stays on guard, pointing the gun at the fallen enemy. With a molten hole in its chest, the armor collapses to the ground. Sitting on the floor, he takes a deep breath, recovering from the tough battle. Bringing the gun to his forehead, he sighs in relief, glad he won. He says he knew a magical fire attack would melt the armor. Looking at the enemy's remains, he wonders what the dungeon boss will be like. Where the monster stood, a glowing item appears on the floor. It's a mythical drink that restores both stamina and mana. Drinking the potion, he notes that thanks to it, he can continue. Later, he faces an opponent that uses magic from a distance. Firing at a monster, he defeats it with a single shot. Using his shield, he defends himself from several projectiles at once. He smashes another enemy, using the hammer with all his might. After fighting, he finally reaches a new part of the dungeon. Standing before a large door, he announces he has finally arrived. With a slight smile, he wonders if he'll face a snake or a demon. He places his hand on the door and starts to push it open. As soon as the door opens, he walks into the new room. Looking around, he questions if this place is really an arena. Suddenly, he notices a presence emerging from the other side of the hall. Then, an imposing figure reveals itself in the darkness, standing at a distance. Staring back, he keeps his gaze fixed on the new opponent. Taking a step, the opponent starts moving toward him. The opponent is revealed to be a giant knight holding a huge sword. Its fixed eyes stare at Bell, waiting for the first move of the fight. Standing in the center of the arena, the two finally face each other in silence. With a slight smile, he says that must be the boss. Facing the giant opponent, Bell prepares for the imminent battle. With his guard up, he carefully watches the knight's every move. Resting the sword on its shoulder, the dungeon boss stares down Bell. It then raises its giant sword, preparing a devastating attack. Seeing the move, he yells out that the attack is coming. The knight brings its sword down towards Bell with full force. The blow is so powerful it slices through the air, but Bell manages to dodge to the side at the last second. The sword hits the ground, opening a huge crater in its place. Startled, he looks at the damage done by the knight's attack. He knows he would have been defeated if the blow had landed. Suddenly, the knight launches a horizontal attack in his direction. Seeing the attack coming, he jumps over the sweeping blow. During the jump, he shouts the name of his other weapon. Wielding Caliburn, he prepares for an aerial counterattack. Coming down from the air, he lands a powerful blow on the knight's head. But the boss's armor seems to resist the attack without a single scratch. Landing on the ground, he realizes the armor is too tough. In response, the knight retaliates with a devastating horizontal strike. He then switches weapons, summoning his pistol, Ragnarok, once again. With his weapon ready, he decides to use the same strategy as before. While dodging the attacks, he begins a countdown from 5. Dodging again, he keeps his full focus on the opponent. He continues the countdown, preparing for the right moment to shoot. With the gun in hand, he aims directly at the boss's chest. Waiting for the right moment, he shouts, "Now!" and gets ready. Then he fires, shouting for the opponent to finally melt. The shot crosses the arena, hitting the knight square in the chest. The impact of the blow throws the knight backward, but it gets back up, and the damage to its armor begins to regenerate. Surprised, he realizes the knight has magic resistance. Without giving him time to react, the knight attacks again. The blow hits the ground, creating a powerful shockwave. Seeing the danger, he summons his shield, Achilles, to protect himself. He blocks the attack, but the impact throws him back. He is sent flying away from the dungeon boss. Hiding behind the shield, he watches the knight approach him. Advancing, the boss strikes the shield, trying to break his guard. Then, the knight leaps up to deliver a crushing stomp. With his guard up, he watches the opponent's attack carefully. Staring intently, he doesn't look away for a single second. The stomp hits the ground, kicking up dust and shattering the floor. After the attack, the knight stands motionless in the middle of the arena. Jumping back, Bell creates distance to escape the danger. Without enough mana, he wonders what he can do now. Creating a dense smoke screen, Bell tries to obscure the knight's vision. Suddenly, something shines brightly in the middle of the smoke screen. His eyes widen as he sees what's coming. The knight's sword is thrown like a projectile in his direction. He blocks the attack with his shield, but the force pushes him back. As he falls to the ground, the knight's sword returns to its hand. With a frightened look, he watches the knight get closer. Surprised, he realizes the sword attack was just a distraction. Punching the ground, the knight creates a powerful shockwave. The impact hits Bell head-on, injuring him badly. Thrown far away, he flies uncontrollably across the arena. Before he can fall, the knight hits him with a punch. The blow throws him hard against the arena wall. He falls to the ground, badly injured and with almost no strength left to continue. The potion he had saved falls to the ground and shatters. On his knees, he recovers, remembering that was his last potion. Picking up its sword, the knight prepares for the next attack. Seeing the boss approach, he decides he needs to risk it all. Holding Achilles, he knows the shield is his heaviest weapon. He then runs towards the opponent for one last charge. Shouting, he warns that the shield isn't just for defense. With all his strength, he throws the shield at the opponent. Spinning through the air, the shield becomes a thrown weapon. At high speed, the shield flies towards the large knight, but he suddenly stops, surprised by the boss's reaction. Batting it with its sword, the knight sends the shield flying back. The weapon then returns in his direction at the same speed. Seeing the projectile, he realizes he can't dodge in time. Without the shield to defend himself, he's completely exposed to the blow. With a fixed gaze, he follows the shield's final trajectory. The shield hits the knight in the back, catching it by surprise. Celebrating his success, he watches the result of his strategy. Passing by the knight, the shield returns directly to his hands. The projectile lands in his hand with precision, causing no damage. Leaping into the air, he summons his hammer and yells at the knight. The knight just stares at him, not moving an inch. The hammer blow lands square on the opponent's head. With the impact, the armor slowly begins to shatter. Kneeling, he takes a deep breath, recovering from the exhausting fight. Looking at the boss, he says the risky plan worked. He says that now all that's left is to hit what's inside the armor. But suddenly, the knight starts to get up again. Even with its broken armor, the opponent is still standing in the arena. With a fixed gaze, he realizes the fight isn't over yet. The knight's armor begins to fall apart, crumbling to pieces. As the armor comes off, the creature reveals its true form, leaving Bell completely confused. Picking up the giant sword, the creature holds it firmly in its hands. Then, a mechanism in the sword activates, surprising the boy. The giant blade then begins to transform into a much smaller weapon. With the new sword in hand, the creature takes a combat stance. Not understanding a thing, Bell just watches his opponent's transformation. Suddenly, the boss lunges forward with incredible speed to attack Bell. Shocked by the speed, he can barely react to the surprise attack. Blocking at the last second, he manages to defend against the swift blow, but the force of the impact violently throws him far away. Screaming in pain, he is thrown with full force across the middle of the arena. After hitting the wall, he crashes to the ground. Taking a step, the dungeon boss approaches Bell. Lying on the ground, Bell seems to have no strength left to continue the fight. Standing in front of him, the boss observes the completely defeated boy. In the checkered hall, Bell and the creature face each other from a distance. The monster approaches, watching Bell, who is collapsed on the floor. Clenching his fist on the ground, he prepares to counter the attack. Then, the creature raises its blade to execute a powerful strike, but the attack is stopped by a gauntlet that appears on Bell's hand. Catching the blow, he warns the monster not to push its luck. Faced with this defense, the monster just stares at the newly formed gauntlet. Just then, Bell summons his sword Caliburn, which materializes in his hand. Now on his feet, he parries the next attack with his new sword. With a different look in his eyes, he declares that the real fight starts now. Lunging forward, the two begin to exchange blows at high speed. His speed is so great that he attacks his opponent from multiple directions. Saying it feels lighter, the monster comments on its new speed, but Bell replies that even so, it's still not faster than him. Charging with all his might, he declares that this will be the end of the fight. Suddenly, the monster's leg begins to glow more intensely. Bell manages to block the blow, but the force of the impact is greater. Seeing the change, he is visibly surprised by its new speed. With difficulty, he holds the opponent's blade against his own sword. He realizes the monster has turned red and is even faster than before. Maintaining his defense, he continues to block the relentless attacks. He then says he's not defeated yet, and that he needs more power. As he calls for more power, a hooded figure appears behind him. With a red eye, he screams for power with all his might. Answering the call, the figure says this is exactly what it wanted. Then, a hand with sharp claws emerges from the shadows. The entity says it accepts, but in return, he must wager his soul. Immediately after, Bell's eye completely changes its appearance again. Overcome by power, he starts screaming as the energy envelops him. He says his mind can't take it, and that his consciousness is fading. As he is questioned, he hears the voice ask if he still wants power. Right after, a memory of him suffering for being weak flashes in his mind. Another memory shows him being killed for not having enough strength. Telling him he should be fed up by now, the voice encourages him to fight back. With a scream of pure rage, he finally accepts the offer of power. Back in the fight, he faces the monster with new marks all over his body. His appearance has changed, and he prepares to attack with everything he's got. Then, the two charge forward and collide with devastating force in the center. As a result, the impact of the blow shatters the ground around them. Overwhelmed, he yells that he will destroy everything in his path. He repeats the word destroy, revealing his only goal at that moment. Even while being grabbed, he warns that he'll finish the monster right there. With a crazed smile, he screams that he will kill them all. But suddenly, the image of Sarah appears in his mind, smiling at him. Upon seeing his sister, his expression of hatred vanishes completely. Still in the fight, he defends himself with difficulty from the creature's attack. Holding back the enemy's blade, he manages to say that he won't do it. At that moment, the image of Sarah's smile comes to his mind. He then states with conviction that he is not fighting to kill. Shouting loudly, he declares that his only goal is to protect her. With his newfound resolve, he goes back to defending against the monster's blows. He then tells the entity to shut up and just give him the power. Wielding his sword firmly, he shouts the skill's name, Aegis! His attack hits head-on, launching the creature high into the air. At this, the entity says it's on his side and will lend him its power. Floating above him, it repeats that it will grant him power if he offers his soul. After the attack, the two face each other again in the middle of the destroyed hall. Without wasting time, Bell charges toward his opponent once more. Seeing the charge, the creature also runs to meet him head-on. Lunging forward, he dodges the attack and lands a blow on its side. Facing multiple opponents, he moves to attack and defend at the same time. Then, one of the monsters prepares a punch to try and hit him square on, but Bell manages to dodge the attack, moving under its arm. Telling the opponent it's too slow, he faces it up close. With a quick move, he manages to disarm the creature, sending its sword flying. Without its weapon, the monster just looks up, watching the sword fly. Preparing the final blow, he raises his sword with both hands. He then brings the blade down with full force right through the middle of his opponent. Piercing through the monster, the blow splits it completely in two. After the attack, he stands still, watching the creature's body on the floor. Now split in two, the monster's body finally falls lifeless in the hall. On the floor, the creature's body begins to slowly disintegrate. Panting, he tells himself that the fight was finally over. Then, the gauntlet on his hand begins to slowly fade away. He remarks that the enemy was strong and almost made him lose control. He says that he really needs to avoid using the Aegis skill as much as possible. Just then, he finds a small vial left on the floor and picks it up. Holding the item, he confirms that he managed to get the legendary ambrosia. He then explains that drinking it will raise his mana to B rank. Having never seen one before, he wonders if it's safe to drink, but he decides it's for the future and drinks the entire contents of the vial. After drinking it all, he stands up and pauses for a moment. Suddenly, his entire body starts to react in a very strange way. He shouts that he can feel his mana rising instantly, but something wrong starts to happen very unexpectedly. With a sudden pain, he screams and clutches his chest. Falling to the floor, he says his entire body feels like it's on fire. Meanwhile, his fallen sword beside him begins to glow brightly. Not understanding anything, he wonders what is happening to him. Losing his strength, he falls flat on his back, completely motionless. As he lies on the floor, his sword releases a massive pillar of energy. Moments later, he opens his eyes in a completely different place. Sitting up, confused, he tries to understand what just happened. He then asks where he is, looking at the magic circle on the floor. All around, the place reveals itself to be a vast, unknown space. Suddenly, a voice informs him that he is finally awakened. Turning around, he finds a hooded man who says it's been a long time. Without showing its face, the mysterious figure just stares at Bell in silence. In complete surprise, Bell shouts, recognizing him as his old master. Then, other strange figures begin to appear around the dark space. On a pillar, a female warrior with a giant hammer watches from a distance. Nearby, another hooded person also manipulates a strange energy in their hands. Above them all, a knight in full armor looks down on him from his throne. With a gesture, the master welcomes him to that place. Unable to react, Bell just observes all the warriors gathered there. The master then explains that he is welcome to the realm of the soul. Taking off his hood, the master says it's thrilling to see his disciple again. Bell happily replies that it's been a long time. He remembers that this is his master, Rygus, who gave him Avalon. He was also the original owner of the famous Achilles shield. The master welcomes him, saying he's very happy to see him again. But Bell asks why he knows him, since he went back in time. Rygus explains that he has always been watching everything from there, even his reincarnation. Not quite understanding, Bell asks what he means by from there. He replies that this realm is a space within the sword Avalon itself. He then adds that the place also holds the souls of the successors. Shocked by this information, he asks about the souls of the previous wielders. Then Bell asks where his former master's real body is. He explains that his real self lives in retirement in the mountains. He clarifies that since Avalon bonded with Bell, the Ragas of this world lost it. Finally, he reveals that his consciousness is connected to the master in that world. Understanding the situation, Bell asks if his return to the past is Avalon's power, but the master replies that he doesn't know, as he believes the sword doesn't have such power. Becoming thoughtful, he wonders what could have really happened. Rygus then places a hand on his head, praising his work in protecting his sister. He repeats that Bell did very well, continuing to pat his head. A little embarrassed, he asks his master to stop. Then he asks why he was suddenly brought to this strange place. As the master is about to explain, he is interrupted by someone else. Stepping forward, a figure appears to interrupt their conversation. He walks up, asking how long they're going to chat and that he wants in. That man is introduced as Raven, the second successor of the sword Avalon. Then, Raven puts his arm around the master, who complains about the interruption. He tells Rygus not to be so serious and squeezes the master's face. From a distance, Bell just watches the strange interaction between the two successors. Then he turns to Bell and introduces himself as Raven, saying it's a pleasure. Just watching the scene, Bell remains silent at the successor's introduction. Then Raven makes a strange gesture, while Bell replies that the pleasure is his. Striking an exaggerated pose, he continues with his little, nonsensical joke. Completely confused, Bell just wonders what just happened. Laughing hard, Raven shouts that he fell for the prepared prank. Coming closer, another successor asks them to stop all the commotion. Introduced as Charlotte, she asks if he can't see the newcomer is lost, but Raven says it's fine, asking for Hiro's opinion on the joke. Sitting on his pillar, the fourth successor just remains silent and isolated. Introduced as Hiro, he asks them to please not talk to him. Angrily, Charlotte says she knows he just likes to annoy people. Raven then tells her not to get mad, calling her Shorty during the argument. Very irritated, she yells and asks who he's calling Shorty. Seeing the argument, Master Rygus asks them both to please stop, but Charlotte turns to him, asking whose side he's really on. Raven turns to the master, asking if he's on his side in the fight. Seeing his master act like that, Bell doesn't even know how to feel. He then remembers what his master said about how incredible his predecessors were. In his memory, the successors were great heroes who fought together against evil. From atop the pillar, the first successor asks them to get to the point. Introduced as Adam, he says there's a reason Bell is there. He explains that they all summoned him to this place so they could advise him. Confused, Bell asks what kind of advice they would give him. Adam then warns him that he must not awaken his weapon's abilities. Upon hearing that warning, he is surprised and doesn't understand the real reason. The successor explains that the weapons release an immense amount of mana. He says Bell's body couldn't handle it yet and would break under the pressure. Understanding the explanation, he finally realizes what that earlier pain was. Adam then asks if he understands that he needs to wait until he's grown more. Hearing the warning, he just clenches his fist tightly in response. Refusing the order, he says there's no way he can stop now. With a determined look, he yells that he needs the power to protect his sister. From his pillar, Adam simply replies that he understands his decision, saying that in that case things change. He prepares to come down. Leaping towards him, he warns that he's going to crush him right there. Caught off guard by the move, he just grits his teeth. Seeing the speed of the attack, he prepares to defend with his sword. In the blink of an eye, Adam appears right behind him. With the blade at his neck, he stands completely still, unable to react. Adam then comments that he thought this would make him realize his immaturity. Grabbing him by the collar, he admits he didn't expect the attack to be blocked. After the quick test, he steps back a bit, observing the boy. Standing in front of him, he comments that Bell has grown through his constant fighting. After a moment, he says it's okay and agrees to the request, but he warns that he should use this one first, materializing a new sword. Meanwhile, the other successors watch the conversation intently from a distance. He then asks if this means they have finally accepted him. Confirming the request, Adam says he must handle just one ability for now. With the new sword in hand, he receives permission to use the B rank ability. Then Adam says they will give him the others when the time is right. Holding the weapon, Bell declares that even the A-rank abilities will come. With a firm gaze, he says he will unlock them all immediately. Hearing the answer, the first successor seems satisfied with his determination. Ruffling his hair, Riven wishes the sixth successor good luck. Charlotte then reminds him to make sure he protects his sister. On his pillar, Hiro remains silent, just watching everyone's farewell. Rejoining the others, Adam announces they will continue to watch over him from the shadows. As they say goodbye, Bell begins to disappear. Back in the dungeon, he realizes he has been sent back. Now on his feet, he notices the pain is gone and feels a strange sensation. Raising his sword, he plans to use the new power on the next task. With a confident smile, he refers to Caliburn's unique ability. Changing scenes, a lone ship sails through the calm ocean waters. On deck, Bell and Razor watch the horizon as the boat advances. Razor then warns him they are getting close to the Leviathan's location. Hearing this, Bell says he understands and that they should prepare to fight. With a different expression, the paladin just watches the boy in silence. Nearby, another crewman also prepares for whatever is to come. Holding his weapon, he gets into position, waiting for the right moment to act. He stands at the ship's bow, observing the scenery before him. Meanwhile, Razor remains with his back turned, staring at the horizon without moving. Moving through the water, the ship continues on its course with the two on deck. With a focused gaze, he watches his companion's every move on the boat. Looking down, Bell asks if this is the place, and Razor confirms. Leaning over the edge, he comments that the place is very quiet and calm. Suddenly, Razor draws a dagger while facing Bell on the deck. The two then exchange a serious look, standing in front of each other. Explaining the plan, Razor says they first need to lure the enemies out. With a cut on his hand, he lets the blood drip into the seawater. He then warns that the smell makes the creatures restless and that they'll come soon. Soon after, a silhouette emerges, and he says that they've arrived, but he realizes it's not just one, but dozens of them appearing. Turning to Bell, he comments that there are far more than he thought. Unfazed, Bell suggests they split up to take care of them all. However, Razor replies that he can't let him do something like that here. Not understanding the refusal, he just asks why they can't do that. With an evil smile, he reveals it's because Bell is going to die now. Suddenly, an attack is launched at him by someone else. Hitting its mark, the attack wraps tightly around the boy's leg. Caught by surprise, he reacts with anger upon realizing the trap. At that moment, the hooded man shouts that Bell fell right into their plan. Removing his hood, Spencer Gray reveals his true identity to the boy. Holding his weapon with a smile, Spencer reveals his true intentions. Angrily, he glares at the one responsible for the trap on the ship. Razor then yells at Spencer, telling him to continue with the plan. Responding to the order, Spencer shouts that he's on it. Yanking the weapon hard, he throws Bell into the air without hesitation. As he's thrown, a heavy weight forms on the end of the rope. With the weight, he plummets into the water, getting pulled down. Shouting, Spencer announces that now comes the final touch for his plan. Then he uses his weapon, creating a strong whirlpool in the seawater. Pulled down, he sinks as Spencer watches him from the ship. The weight on his leg keeps pulling him deeper and deeper. With a smile, Razor says he is to be devoured by the Leviathans. Now on an ice platform, he says that the plague of Bell is gone. Sinking in the ocean, he starts to run out of air. Now at the bottom of the sea, he summons the shield Achilles to save himself. Holding the shield, he uses the power of the wind to survive down there. At that, Achilles creates a layer of air that protects him from the water. Using the bubble, he manages to draw a breath and breathe again. He realizes that Razor and Spencer have teamed up to try and finish him off. Looking up, he sees that they have frozen the surface of the sea, but the bigger problem is the large number of Leviathans surrounding him. He realizes his first task is to get rid of the weight on his leg, so he raises the shield, preparing to shatter the weight with all his might. With a powerful blow, he destroys the weight and can move again, but he notices his leg has started to bleed because of the blow. Angrily, he deduces the wound is from when Spencer grabbed him earlier. With blood in the water, the creatures finally notice his presence. Seeing he's been discovered, he summons his sword Caliburn to fight. Despite the disadvantage, he sees this as a good opportunity to act. Wielding his weapon, he prepares for his first great battle since being reincarnated. Ready for the fight? He shouts to unlock his unique skill. Just then, one of the Leviathans lunges forward, its mouth open to devour him. Using the new skill, a blade is fired toward the monster. Striking it right in the head, the attack manages to stop the creature's advance. Immediately after, several more identical blades begin to appear all around. One of the blades flies swiftly, slicing the monster that was trying to attack. Using the shield as a board, he remarks it's been a while since he's used this. With the blades in position, he activates his technique, Star Blade Formation. With a smile, he says it's time to enjoy the hunt against them. Seeing the challenge, the sea monsters charge to attack him all at once. He then commands the formation to intercept the sea monster's attack. The floating blades shoot out like arrows toward all the creatures. His blades attack the Leviathans from all directions at once. Each summoned blade pierces through the monsters with the same ease as Caliburn. Ready to finish it, he declares he'll cut them all down like seaweed. Changing scenes, Razor shouts as he fights the monsters on the ice platform. With one blow, he strikes a Leviathan head-on, shattering the ice. After felling the creature, he comments that 5 minutes have already passed. With a confident smile, he says that Belle must be dead by now. Seeing that, Spencer praises the impressive strength Razor showed in the fight. He's surprised that Razor handled so many monsters by himself. At that, Razor warns him to stay by his side if he doesn't want to die, but Spencer says no, and that he can at least help a little. Running across the ice, he ends up stepping on a spot that begins to crack. Not understanding what's happening, he just looks down, surprised. Suddenly, something shoots out of the water and hits him with great force. Seeing the attack, Razor shouts, completely shocked by the unexpected scene. A dark sphere hits the platform, opening a large hole in the ice. From the impact, the large ice platform begins to break apart completely. Seeing the situation, he draws his weapons, realizing things have gotten complicated. Then, a huge monster emerges, and he comments on its terrifying appearance. Without hesitation, the monster attacks, swinging one of its enormous tentacles upward. With a leap, Razor manages to dodge the blow and stay on the platform. He knows this Charybdis is a powerful B-rank monster. Worried, he realizes he could die if he's not extremely careful. Suddenly, the creature's mouth begins to contract strangely. Then, it fires several high-speed ice projectiles at him. Leaping between the attacks, he manages to dodge every shot, but the creature doesn't stop, continuing its assault with its long tentacles. Dodging once more, he knows he'll be in trouble if he gets caught. With a serious look, he realizes he needs to end this, and fast. He explains that his ability allows him to charge mana and release it all at once. Even though it's simple, he says the power of his ability is immense. Focusing his energy, he believes he can take the monster down in a single blow. Without waiting, the monster launches another tentacle attack at him. Narrowly dodging, he uses his Shining Strike technique against the creature. His attack hits head-on, causing a huge impact on the sea creature. Even wounded, the giant monster doesn't seem to be defeated by the strike. Using a Leviathan as a shield, it managed to defend itself at the last second. Cursing, he says he'll have to charge his attack all over again. The creature then strikes with force, shattering the ice platform beneath him. The impact throws him far back as he tries to escape the broken ice. Leaping back to the ship, he manages to save himself from falling into the water. Now, without solid ground, he realizes the situation has become much more complicated. To make matters worse, more of the smaller Leviathans also begin to emerge from the water. Seeing the new enemies, he readies himself for another round of combat. Grumbling again, he sees there are still a few Leviathans left to fight. Charging forward, he attacks the two monsters that climbed onto the deck, but the larger monster seizes the chance to attack with its tentacle again. Hit squarely, he's thrown violently against the boat. Fallen and wounded, he says his weapon is for duels, not for so many opponents. With the ship surrounded, he realizes he no longer has a foothold. At that moment, the monsters seize the opportunity to attack him all at once. Seeing he's surrounded, he realizes the situation has gotten truly dire. But suddenly, Belle appears, flying on his shield, and slices a Leviathan. Completely shocked, he shouts, unable to believe what he's seeing. Using his board, Belle cuts down several of the monsters in his path. Then he asks how the kid managed to survive and still be alive. Floating, Belle offers to help with the fight, since he's in a tight spot. Angrily, he tells Bell to shut up and asks what he could possibly do. He yells that the Charybdis is a B-rank monster, far too strong for the kid. With a smirk, Bell asks, "Is that so?" and says he'll put it to the test. The giant monster then attacks with all its tentacles at once. In response, Bell summons his floating blades and prepares to counterattack. With a shout, he commands the blades to intercept all the tentacles. Seeing the skill, he wonders how Bell can use it so early on. Razor says there's more to it, doubting he can control all of that. With a yell, he warns that he's going to slice it up and feed it to the fishes. Seeing his determination, the monster prepares to launch its own attack. Focusing energy in its mouth, it fires a blast at the boy. With a leap, Bell dodges the attack and moves over the ship. Startled, Razor yells that the blast is going to destroy their entire ship. Then, Bell says if that was its trump card, he'll show his own. He then activates Gamma Formation, bringing the blades together at a single point. Shouting, "Integrate!" he combines all the blades into a single powerful attack. Surprised, Razor wonders if the swords really fused into one. With a yell, he descends with all his might upon the monster. The attack rushes forward like a beam of light towards the enormous creature. Focusing all his power, he braces for the impact of the final blow. He then pierces through the monster with his blade of light effortlessly. Passing through the creature's body, he slices it completely in half. Shouting, he tells the monstrosity to go take a nap at the bottom of the ocean. The impact of the light attack completely obliterates the creature's body. After the battle, he lands on the water near the remains of the giant monster. Seeing the scene, Razor is shocked that he defeated the Charybdis all by himself. Landing on the ship, he turns to Razor and warns him that he's next. He says he needs to get revenge for the trick that was used against him earlier. At this, Razor realizes Bell will become a threat to Jin very soon. So he decides he needs to eliminate the boy right here. No matter what, he asks if the boy really thinks he can beat him, a B-rank hunter. But Bell returns the question, asking if Razor thinks he can win. Taunting him, he says Razor used Spencer because he was afraid to fight. Staring each other down on the deck, the two prepare for the great final confrontation. With no more words, the two charge forward to finally begin their fight. As their weapons clash, the force of the impact creates sparks on the deck. Parrying the blow, he manages to push Razor back with his sword, but the paladin lands a punch, sending him flying. Landing on his feet, he prepares to continue the fight against his opponent. Wielding his sword, he realizes Razor is stronger than he expected. Furious, he charges forward, cursing the boy as a useless brat. To defend himself, Bell activates his formation to intercept the attack. One of his floating blades flies out to block the paladin's charge. Seeing the blade, he simply dodges the attack with a swift movement. With a precise strike, he easily shatters the blade Bell had summoned. Then he says he's got him, and that he'll strike his blind spot. Charging his mana, he prepares his skill once more. He then unleashes his shining strike, aiming right for the boy's back, but the attack is blocked by two of Bell's floating blades. Turning around, he asks if Razor really thought that would work. On the ship's deck, he realizes this fight won't be easy to win. He notices his mana is draining quickly from the skills he's used. To use the formation, he gets ready with his last floating sword. Seeing his chance, Razor announces that his next attack will be the last. He then charges at the boy with everything he's got, ready to strike. With a swift strike, Razor hits him right in the shoulder with his weapon. The impact is heavy, causing the paladin's weapon to press down harder. Being pushed back, he tries to defend himself, but his opponent's strength is greater. As the blade cuts, he screams in pain from the opponent's blow. Thrown backward, he realizes Razor is better at close quarters combat. He knows he could win using Aegis, but he fears the risk. Coming up with a new plan, he summons the two weapons called Ragnarok. Aiming the weapons, he fires 2 shots at his opponent, but he blocks the shots, asking if Bell thought that would actually work. Despite the defense, he prepares for the next move in the fight. He says Bell is too slow to hit him like that. Using the gun's recoil, Bell propels himself forward with greater speed. With the boost, he launches himself at Razor, who isn't expecting it. Razor realizes he used the weapon to gain speed for his attack. Charging forward, he manages to land a grazing blow on the paladin's face. With a smile, he says Razor fell right into his trap. Suddenly, the last floating blade strikes Razor right in the back. Unable to react, he screams in pain from the unexpected attack. Falling to his knees, he clutches the wound in his chest, confused. In great pain, he realizes this was what Bell wanted all along. Landing in front of him, Bell closes in to finish the fight. He then announces that the fight is over and that it's game over. With a serious look, he tells Razor to give up trying to kill him. Weakened, Razor just repeats the word, "Give up." Unable to believe it, even wounded, he says that Bell will become a threat to Jin one day. With a roar of anger, he declares that Bell must die here and now. Bell then asks why he is so loyal to someone like Jin. In a flashback, Razor appears, panting in the middle of a battlefield. Collapsing exhausted on a body, He was completely out of strength to fight. On his knees, he remains there, surrounded by bodies and pools of blood. Unable to move anymore, he says he can't go on. Just then, someone approaches him. Stepping on the blood-soaked ground, the figure of Jin emerges, walking toward the fallen warrior. He asks if Razor is the mercenary who killed 300 people. Too weak to speak, he just wonders who this person is in front of him. Taking out a potion, Jin approaches to help him recover. He pours the liquid, instantly healing Razor's wounds. With a smile, he tells him to rejoice, as he will be his new master. Back in the present, Razor is healed by the power of his loyalty to Jin. Explaining his devotion, he says it was Jin who took him in that day. Firm in his resolve, he says he must repay that kindness somehow. Screaming, he vows to fulfill his promise no matter what. Razor then tosses one of his weapons into the air, drawing attention. His 2 weapons are now floating in the air, ready for a new attack. Seeing his determination, Bell says he understands that he's made up his mind. He says he can respect the knightly honor Razor is showing. He then summons his own weapons, telling him they should fight all out as paladins. Angered by his words, Razor calls him a brat once again. He then begins to charge his mana again to use his skill. Seeing the technique, Bell realizes it's the same move he used before. Using his weapon's recoil, he propels himself to strike him before the attack lands. With a punch, he tries to hit Razor's face before the skill activates, but the paladin sidesteps, dodging the blow. Then, he lands a punch on Bell's stomach, who wasn't expecting it. Surprised, he realizes he fell right into his opponent's trap. Shouting, "Checkmate!" he moves in to deliver the final blow, but Bell replies that the fight isn't really over yet. Seeing his last chance, he points toward his true target. Just then, the hidden blade flies at high speed toward Razor. Striking him from behind, the sword pierces completely through him, undefended. With the force of the blow, he screams in pain, not understanding the attack. He says it's impossible, as he was sure he had destroyed all the swords. With a tired look, Bell simply replies, "Too bad for you." He explains that he only made it look like the blades were destroyed before. Realizing the trap, he asks if Bell predicted everything until the very end. With no strength left to fight, he finally falls defeated on the deck. Seeing the result, he comments that he would have lost without his ace up his sleeve. Having defeated Razor, he confirms that he has taken down the top B ranker. On the ship's bow, he realizes he has grown stronger, just as he planned. After the long battle, the ship continues on its way across the ocean. Cutting to the family home, we see the grand castle of the Catastrophes. Opening the door, Sarah enters the room, calling for her brother. Not finding him, a slightly worried expression crosses her face. Unsure of where he is, she looks from side to side, searching for him. In the hallway, she calls for him again, hoping for a response. She runs down a long corridor, shouting his name once more. Stopping, she wonders if her brother hasn't come home yet. Alone in the hall, she says to herself that he should have finished his task by now. Just then, she turns and notices one of the doors is open. With a smile, she says the library is open and he might be in there. Running to the door, she goes inside to finally see if she can find him. Entering the room, she calls his name but sees someone else with their back turned. Taking a step, the mysterious figure turns toward the girl. Not understanding, she just stares at the person who was inside. She then comes face to face with Jin, who is staring at her with a serious expression. Even though she's scared, she knows she has to greet him somehow. Approaching, she tries to speak with him but gets nervous in his presence. With a look of contempt, Jin just stares at her in complete silence. Startled by his reaction, she screams and backs away in fear. He then turns and calls her useless before starting to walk away. Shocked by the insult, she begins to tremble and step back. Suddenly, she bumps into someone who appeared behind her without warning. Confused, she turns to see who it is. She finds Bell, who asks what Jin wants with his sister. Saying nothing, Jin just glares at the 2 siblings with contempt. Seeing her brother, she happily shouts his name. She hugs him tightly, and he tells her he's home now. Holding his hand, she worriedly says he's hurt again. He calms her down, saying he just ran into a tough opponent. With a serious look, he explains it was a B-rank paladin named Razor. Uncaring, Jin just listens to the story in complete silence. With a hand on his sister, Bell explains he was free to turn the tables. Turning to leave, Jin says he doesn't care about that. He warns them they're just pebbles in his path, nothing more. With a defiant look, Bell says the feeling is mutual. Jin then tells them to get out of his way, as he has no time for pebbles. Then Bell calls him brother in a serious tone. He declares that he will be the one to succeed their father, since Jin can't protect the family. Taking a step, Jin's energy begins to manifest in the area. With a glowing eye, he glares at his younger brother with intense anger. Suddenly, his entire body begins to release immense pressure. A wave of power spreads out, filling the room with a dark energy. Terrified, Sarah screams and clings to her brother in fear. Seeing his sister's reaction, he glares at Jin with pure rage. Watching the scene, Jin just lets out a mocking smile at the two. Laughing, Jin says the situation has suddenly become quite interesting. Turning, he comments that sometimes pebbles are interesting to look at. As he leaves, he warns that Belle can try to kill him whenever he wants. After the argument, Sarah calls out to him, still worried about what happened. Placing a hand on her, he reassures her and says everything is fine. He realizes that Jin's pressure is something extraordinary to witness. He knows there's a huge difference between A and B ranks. To defeat Jin, he decides he needs to reach A rank soon. A few days later, the scene shifts back to the family's grand castle. With a suitcase in hand, he prepares for the new journey ahead. Arriving at the gate, he finds Galleon waiting for him there. Seeing the suitcase, the old warrior says it looks like he's ready to go. Kneeling, he thanks everyone for coming to see him off. Then, Galleon explains he's sending a B-rank paladin with him. Stepping forward, Peter Fred introduces himself as the bodyguard. Hearing the proposal, he asks to make one last request to his father. With a serious look, Galleon asks what he wants to ask now. Kneeling, he prepares to make his final request before leaving. Suddenly, Sarah comes running with a suitcase in hand and calls his name. With a smile, she apologizes for being late and walks up to him. She hands the suitcase to her brother, who takes it immediately. With his sister by his side, he asks if he can take her with him. Not understanding the reason, Galleon asks why he wants to take her. He explains that he's worried and would like to have her nearby, but his father refuses, saying only the bodyguard can go along. Seeing the refusal, she begs her father to let her go. With a firm gaze, Galleon tells her not to beg and sticks to his decision. So Belle asks that, in that case, Sarah be his bodyguard. He explains that, with her by his side, he feels 100 times stronger. Hearing the request, Galleon just stares at the two in complete silence. Laughing, he says that was quite a bold statement from his youngest son. With a nod, he finally agrees to the request and lets them leave. Now in the carriage, the two siblings begin their long journey to the academy. At the window, they look outside, excited for their new journey. After some time, they finally arrive at the Grand Athena Academy. Getting out of the carriage, they grab their bags to enter the grounds. Seeing the size of the school, Sarah is amazed by the architecture. With a smile, he confirms that it is, after all, a school for nobles. He then arranges with his sister that she will study while he's in class. Walking through the courtyard, he says they first need to get settled in. Suddenly, they notice a large commotion happening right in front of them. Belle realizes it's a training fight between some of the students. Impressed, Sarah comments that they all look very strong while fighting. With a war cry, one of the students attacks his opponents with an axe. Watching the fight, he notices that man is a cut above the rest. With a confident smile, the blonde student says his opponent is weak. After knocking down the others, he announces that only one is left standing. Holding his axe, he says that today is the day of the great fight. He then charges forward, screaming, ready to finish off the last rival there. But the other student just smiles, calmly waiting for the attack. With a swift move, the blonde man brings his axe down for a decisive blow. Seeing this, Sarah screams desperately, telling him to be careful. However, the axe is stopped mid-air with just one of the opponent's hands. With the block, the attacker is thrown back and falls to the ground. Belle watches the scene, realizing the winner is at least B rank. Nearby, other students comment that he won with a single blow. Upon hearing the name Rothwindsor, Belle and Sarah react unexpectedly. A flashback shows the rivalry between the Catastrophe and Rothwindsor families. With a smile, the heir faces the two siblings, who are his arch-enemies. The scene changes as the Academy's entrance ceremony finally begins. In a large hall, the headmaster congratulates the new students of the year. As the council president, Albert Rothwindsor welcomes everyone. With a smile, he says he has high hopes for all the new students there. With a serious look, he finishes by saying he expects them all to be strong. Belle watches Albert, the heir to the rival family and the strongest third-year student. He remembers not meeting him in his past life, but he knows of him. A memory shows him being killed by an S-rank paladin in the past. He then wonders if Albert could be the one responsible for his death. After the ceremony, students comment that the president is a B-rank paladin. They also mention that there are other B-rank council members. One of them explains that the council is formed by the top 4 from the festival. Another student concludes that Albert is the strongest in the entire academy. Walking down the hall, he ponders if his killer was really Albert. To prevent the future, he decides he must show the power of the catastrophe. To do that, he decides he needs to enter the martial arts tournament. His goal is to make Albert admit defeat in front of everyone. The scene changes. He is now sitting in his classroom at the academy. While the others chat, he just observes the room in silence. Suddenly, a boy approaches and asks if the seat is taken. Bell replies that it isn't and that he can sit there. Sitting down, the boy introduces himself as Lime Flexiel and greets him. Upon hearing the name, he has an unexpected reaction and is stunned. Turning around, he shouts Lime's name, unable to believe who he's found. Confused, Lime asks what the problem is. Playing it off, he says it's nothing and greets him back. Bell remembers that in the future, Lime would become the Knight of Retribution. Looking at his classmate, he notes that right now, he's just a fraction of that. About to introduce himself, he falls silent, not knowing what to say. In a flashback, Galleon warns him to hide his name and status at the academy. He says that many would help him if he used the Catastrophe name. With that, he advises Bell to prove his worth with his own power. Back in the classroom, he introduces himself as Libel Slayer, hiding his identity. Upon hearing the name, Lime asks if he's also a commoner. An emblem on the uniform shows each student's noble class. Commoners wear a circle, while nobles wear an emblem with a star. Hiding his status, he confirms he's a commoner like his classmate, but Lime explains that he's actually a baronet, a minor title. He comments that most students come from very prestigious families. With a smile, he says he hopes they get along as fellow commoners. Thoughtfully, Bell reflects on becoming friends with the future Knight of Retribution. Sitting there, he remembers that he never had a single friend in his past life. Suddenly, someone else approaches and calls out to Lime in the classroom. The boy stops in front of the desk and stares at Lime with a serious expression. Surprised, Lime recognizes him as Roger, his friend from his hometown. The other students comment that Roger is a count's son and is already D rank. With a smile, he asks why Lime is at this academy. Awkwardly, Lime replies that he just took the entrance exam like everyone else. Congratulating his friend, Roger claps, but his tone suddenly changes. Grabbing his classmate, he says that Athena is no place for a commoner. With disdain, he asks if Lime could do him a favor and get out of there. Surprised, Lime tries to argue, but is cut off before he can finish. Roger grabs him tighter and yells that slaves must obey their masters. With a threatening glare, he warns that he can crush him with a single word. Bell stands up and says, "That's enough." Held by Roger, Lime calls out to him. Surprised by the sudden intervention, Roger then turns and asks who he is to interfere. He looks at the emblem on Bell's uniform, seeing it's a commoner's. With a mocking smile, he asks if Bell is just another commoner. Standing up, Bell tells him to let Lime go, ignoring the taunt. With a smirk, Roger drops Lime to the floor, who falls without being able to react. Then, Roger lunges forward and lands a hard punch right in Bell's face. As Bell hits the floor from the blow, Lime screams, unable to believe what he's seeing. Worried, Bell rushes to help his new friend who was assaulted. Laughing at the situation, Roger scoffs at the pained scream his friend let out. Angrily, Bell asks if Roger really considers himself a paladin. He says that as a noble, he should be the one protecting commoners. But Roger replies that slaves only exist to be exploited by nobles. Turning to his attacker, Bell says that counts fall just as easily as commoners. Annoyed, Roger asks if he's looking for a fight and prepares his magic. Summoning his weapons, he gets ready to attack Bell in the classroom. Seeing there's no other way, Bell tells Lime to step back for the fight. The other students watch the two as they prepare to duel. Without a word, Roger just glares at him with a look of rage and contempt. Drawing his sword, he warns that he's going to teach him a lesson. Laughing at the situation, Roger starts mocking him relentlessly in front of everyone. Then he asks if that sheath is really his so-called divine weapon. Bell replies that, in that case, Roger would be less than a simple fly. Furious, Roger yells that he'll kill him for daring to look down on him. Unfazed, Bell just tells Roger to try it if he thinks he can. The other students watch the duel, frightened by the commotion in the room. With a shout, Roger charges forward to attack Bell, weapon in hand. Clutching the sheath, Bell prepares to defend himself from the incoming attack. Roger then thrusts the tip of his weapon toward him with speed. Suddenly, a hand appears and stops the attack before it can hit Bell. A blonde girl appears in the middle of the room, interrupting their fight. With her harp, she creates a protective barrier that surrounds everyone. The barrier's force manages to stop them both, and they feel the impact. With a smile, she warns them not to fight in here anymore. Asking them to get along, she gives a wink, ending the commotion. Not understanding a thing, Bell wonders who this strange girl is. carrying her harp, she approaches the two to formally introduce herself. She says her name is Silpha and that it's a pleasure to meet them. Shocked, Roger realizes she is Silpha El Page, from a noble family. The teacher then enters and tells everyone to sit down, as class is about to begin. For the first class, the teacher announces she will be testing their skills. She explains that they must use their weapons to attack the targets. The targets are several stone golems standing still in the training yard. She then asks them to aim for the golems and show their power. One of the students prepares to be the first to attack the targets. With a cry, he charges forward and strikes the stone golem with his sword, but the blow doesn't cause much damage, just a small cut on the statue. Surprised, he realizes the golem is much tougher than it looked. Suddenly, the statue's eyes begin to glow with a strange light. With the light, the cut on the golem regenerates completely in seconds. Watching the scene, Belle realizes the golems can regenerate. Afterward, the other students try to attack, but also without much success. The teacher comments that most of this year's students are E rank, calling the next one, it's Lime's turn to show his skills, but the teacher notices that his spear has no magical power at all. With a shout, he prepares to attack the golem with his spear, but he is easily stopped by the statue's arm, causing no damage. From the impact, he is thrown backward and falls to the ground. Laughing at him, Roger taunts him for not being able to use magic properly. Lying on the ground, Lime just stares at the golem that easily knocked him down. Then Roger says he'll show them the difference in power between the two. With his weapon, he conjures a chain of fire for the attack. Unleashing the chain, he swings it and attacks the golems with the fire. The attack hits its mark, melting the stone of the training statue. After the blow, the golem is left with a large burn mark. With a single strike, he destroys all the statues at once. Impressed, the teacher praises him, saying he has the power of a D rank. With a smirk, he turns to the other students proud. Excited, Silpha raises her hand and says it's her turn to attack. Grabbing her harp, she says it's time for her grand performance. Playing her harp, she releases a wave of energy around the yard. The sound is so loud that the other students have to cover their ears. The sound waves hit the golems, causing their stone to shatter. After the attack, the stone statue lies completely destroyed on the ground. The students comment that the two of them are on a completely different level. Roger praises her performance, saying he respects the Marquise's daughter. With a gesture, he tries to get closer to maintain good relations with her family, but she asks him to stop, as she doesn't like his attitude. She explains that in school, all students are equal, without exception. She says that status and family don't matter inside Athena Academy. Annoyed, he just turns his head and clicks his tongue at the lecture. The teacher then calls Belle, or rather, Libel, for the test. With a mocking smile, Roger comments that here comes another commoner. Laughing, he wonders what Belle can do with just a sheath. Belle replies that he won't be using the sheath, surprising everyone there. Extending his hand, he summons his sword, Caliburn, for the test. Roger shouts, shocked to see a second sacred weapon with his classmate. Silpha is also surprised, not expecting such a display of power. Beside them, Lime is amazed to see the sword summoned by Belle. Mocking again, Roger says the sword has no magical power at all. He says that without magic, the sword will just bounce off the stone golem. With a confident look, Belle simply replies that they'll see the result. Then he gets into position, ready to attack the golem with his sword. With several quick strikes, he cuts the statue into dozens of pieces. With the statue destroyed, stone fragments fly across the yard. The other students are shocked by the display of skill they just witnessed. The teacher is also surprised, unable to believe he destroyed the golem. Belle explains that with Caliburn, he doesn't even need magic to win. Not understanding a thing, Roger wonders how a commoner can be so strong. Excited, Lime congratulates him, saying he was amazing in the test. He says it was nothing special, and that Lime could do it too. But Lime replies that he is incredible, and that he's envious of his power. With a smile, Belle reassures him, saying that he has talent too. He says that Lime can become the strongest knight if he doesn't give up. Hearing the encouragement, Lime thanks him, his eyes filled with hope. Suddenly, Silpha jumps in front of him, surprising her two friends. With sparkling eyes, she asks how he can use the weapon like that. The other students gather around, praising Belle's incredible display of skill. One of them even asks if that isn't the strongest weapon among them. Irritated by the comment, Roger just glares at him from a distance, saying nothing. Nervous, the boy corrects himself, saying he was excluding Roger from the comparison. Angrily, Roger clicks his tongue and turns his face away, annoyed by the situation. The teacher then ends the class, saying that was all for the day. She announces that the next day, they will have a practical skills test. For the test, they will need to hunt monsters in the forest behind the school. After class, Belle and his new friends talk in the academy hallway. Far away, Roger calls his servant Bulk, who appears to receive orders. With a strange smile, the servant just waits for what his master will say. Roger then asks to borrow the familiar that Bulk uses for his protection. Surprised, he asks if Roger intends to use the monster during the class. Angrily, Roger asks if there's any problem with his plan. The servant replies no and praises his master's bold actions. He says he can already imagine the terror on the other students' faces. With a wicked smile, he says he's going to send that commoner to hell. The professor explains that the practical test will take place in the academy's forest. She says that monsters ranging from F to E rank have been released for the test. The day's task is simple: hunt all the creatures in the forest. Additionally, whoever kills the most monsters will receive bonus points on their grade. With a smile, Roger readies himself for the test, already thinking about his plan. The professor then gives the signal, telling all the students to begin the hunt. Getting ready, the students take their positions to enter the forest. Excited, Silpha challenges Belle, saying she wants to see who will take first place, but he replies that there's no way he's giving up first place. As he heads into the forest, he's stopped by Lime, who asks if he can tag along. He explains that he doesn't feel confident enough to fight alone in the forest yet. Belle agrees, but warns him that he won't go easy or slow down. Running ahead, he tells Lime to follow him into the forest. Right away, they encounter a group of serpent monsters in their path. Without hesitation, he charges forward and cuts down one of the monsters in a single blow. Slicing through the monsters, he carves a path through the forest with his sword. After taking down the serpents, he picks up one of their fangs. Holding the fang, he comments that this task isn't even a warm-up. Impressed, Lime says he's incredible for defeating Nagas in one hit, but Belle warns him not to talk and to focus on the mission. Suddenly, a monster appears and attacks Lime, who was caught off guard. Just then, Belle appears and cuts the creature down, saving his friend from danger. As Lime thanks him, he's warned not to let his guard down, as there are more enemies. Still shaken, he pulls himself together and prepares to fight with his spear. Nearby, the other students are also fighting the forest monsters. Close by, a girl uses her whip to defeat a few goblins. Watching everyone fight, Lime decides he needs to try harder in the test. Hiding behind a tree, Roger watches the two from a distance. With a look of rage, he tells Belle not to get too cocky. Muttering, he curses the commoner, annoyed by his skill in the forest. With a smirk, Roger says this is the end for the commoner. Then he activates his summoning staff to begin his evil plan. Suddenly, a magic circle appears on the ground, right under Belle. Confused, he wonders what this magic appearing here is. From the circle, a fire creature begins to be summoned in the forest. The summoning reveals a huge fire monster, which glares at Belle with rage. Terrified, he yells as he recognizes the creature as a fire salamander. With a roar, the monster prepares to attack all the students there. Seeing the creature, the students start running in fear. The salamander attacks, spreading fire throughout the forest and trapping everyone. Scared, Lime freezes, unable to believe what's happening. With its mouth open, the monster shoots a large fireball at Lime. Seeing his friend in danger, he screams in desperation, not knowing what to do. With a shout, Belle shoves Lime, warning him to watch out for the attack. Using his shield, Belle throws himself in front of the fireball to save him. With his shield raised, he yells for Lime to escape with the other students. He wonders why a B-rank monster would be in this place. Without a second thought, he summons his sword and his floating blades. Then he commands all the blades to attack the fire salamander. The attacks hit their mark, cutting and wounding the giant monster. From a distance, Roger is shocked that Belle can also use a summoning. He calls his servant Bulk, preparing for a new strategy. With a smile, the servant says he will do as his master commands. The blades continue their assault, surrounding the salamander with swift strikes. Lime is stunned, wondering who Belle really is. With a gesture, he commands the monster to be obliterated with one last attack. His blades fly towards the creature for a final, precise strike, but the servant, Bulk, appears and blocks the attack with a strange weapon. With the block, the blades clash against the staff, missing their target. Seeing the intervention, Belle reacts with anger and surprise at what just happened. In the forest clearing, Belle and Lime face the salamander and its two masters. Taking a step forward, someone emerges to confront the two students. Walking to the center, he praises Belle's impressive and unique ability. Angrily, Belle asks if he is the master of that fire monster. With a cold stare, he replies that his only goal is Belle's head. The salamander then unleashes a powerful fireball in his direction. At the same time, the servant Bulk fires his weapon, launching a water attack. The two attacks, fire and water, collide mid-air. The impact of the blows creates a great vortex with the two elements. The collision forms a smoke screen, covering the entire area. Taking advantage of the smoke, he summons his Achilles shield and creates a gale, but Bulk warns him that he's too slow for that kind of attack. Raising his arms, he casts a spell called Water Prison. With the spell, several water bubbles appear and float in the air. With a smile, he announces that Bel's sword has been sealed. With his sword sealed, he realizes he's facing a B-rank opponent. Now at a disadvantage, he's surrounded by the salamander and its master. The two enemies attack at the same time, with a shot and a fireball. Using his shield, he tries to defend himself, but the force of the blows is immense. With a water blade, he prepares to counter their combined attacks. He realizes the situation is dire. Hiding, Lime wonders what to do, afraid his friend might die. From a distance, he sees Roger with a staff, watching the whole fight unfold. Surprised, he wonders what Roger is doing there with that weapon. He recognizes the staff as an heirloom of Roger's family, the Lindgrisses. He runs, shouting for Roger, trying to get the noble's attention. Seeing his friend, Roger turns, surprised by his sudden appearance. Pointing at the salamander, he asks if that is his summoning. With a shout, he tells Roger to stop because his friend is in danger, but Roger punches him, knocking him to the ground so he won't interfere. With disdain, Roger tells Lime to stay on the ground, calling him a weakling. On the ground, he wonders if there's anything he can do now. In a memory, he's shown being dragged across the ground by a man. Fallen, he hears the man calling him pathetic for not being able to use magic. In another memory, Roger humiliates him, calling him a commoner. Angrily, he uses his spear to help himself up. Standing, he faces Roger, ready to challenge the noble right then and there. He remembers Bel's words, saying that he had talent. He thinks that was the first time anyone had ever said those words to him. Determined, he says he won't let Bel die, and that he will save him. Roger asks if he's serious about trying to fight him. With a smirk, he calls him a weakling, doubting his strength. Angrily, he tells Roger to shut up and stay out of it. With his spear glowing, he tells them not to decide his worth without his permission. With a nervous twitch, Roger is surprised by Lime's sudden change. Angrily, he tells Lime not to get cocky just because he can use magic. But Lime just replies that he's right, and that he's going to beat him right there. Wielding his weapon, Roger prepares an attack with his fire blade. Shouting, he tells the trash to die and unleashes a wave of fire. With his spear, Lime prepares to defend against the incoming attack. He casts an ice shield, which clashes with the fire magic. On impact, the ice shield shatters, but it manages to stop the blow. Surprised, Roger wonders what just happened and how he defended himself. With a serious look, Lime says that Roger himself is the real trash. Infuriated, he prepares to attack with a direct blow from his weapon. Swinging the chain, he charges forward to hit Lime with everything he's got. At that moment, Lime's spear transforms into a boomerang and flies away. The two then charge forward, and their weapons clash with great force. The fire blade begins to melt the ice on the spear's tip. Shocked, he can't believe his weapon is being broken like that. With a shout, Lime shatters Roger's weapon with his ice spear. With the blow, the summoning staff shatters into pieces. Weaponless, Roger falls to his knees, completely defeated in the forest. In disbelief, he just stares at the remains of his heirloom on the ground. He wonders how an F rank managed to freeze his powerful flames. Standing over him, Lime says it's strange. He used to be afraid of him. Staring him down, he says that now he feels nothing in his presence. He then tells Roger to hand over what's left of the summoning staff. Angrily, Roger says his family could destroy Lime's house. Pointing his spear at him, Lime prepares for another attack. With a scream of pain, ice begins to freeze Roger's legs. With a cold gaze, he tells Roger to hand over the staff at once. Terrified, he screams that he'll give him the staff, apologizing for everything. Begging, he asks to be spared and says he won't be cruel anymore. On his knees, he keeps begging for Lime to leave him alone. Taking the broken staff, Lime prepares to give him his ultimatum. He warns Roger to never get involved with him or Bel again. After taking the staff, he turns to leave, but Roger grits his teeth, a look of pure rage on his face. Grabbing the chain of his weapon, he prepares for a surprise attack. With a flash of fire, he hurls the weapon at Lime. The weapon flies at high speed, ready to strike the defenseless target. With a shout, he reveals it was all a lie and tells Lime to die. But Lime turns and prepares to defend against the treacherous attack. Using his spear, he creates a wall of ice that blocks the weapon. Seeing it failed, Roger is shocked and remarks what a pity. With the staff broken, the fire on Roger's weapon finally goes out. An ice blade appears, slicing the weapon's chain in half. After winning the fight, he just stares at the now disarmed Roger. Enraged, Roger screams, unable to believe he was defeated by a commoner. He tells Lime to stop, but it's too late for anything. With the staff broken, the salamander roars and slowly begins to fade. The monster's fiery body vanishes until nothing is left. From a distance, Bulk shouts for his master. Seeing the plan has completely failed, Lime ties up Roger, who is still unconscious on the forest floor. Seeing this, Bulk curses Bel and prepares to fire his weapon, but suddenly, A floating blade flies out and grazes him. Belle then asks if he really has time to be distracted. With the situation resolved, Lime realizes Roger was behind everything. Facing Bulk, Belle says Roger wanted to get rid of him, but failed. With a serious look, he warns that in a one-on-one fight, Bulk can't win. Irritated, Bulk aims his weapon at him, calling him a brat once again. With several blades, Belle charges at high speed to attack the servant. Surprised, Bulk is frozen, seeing the attack coming his way. With a serious gaze, Belle says that Bulk is just an inferior B rank. With a swift blow, he hits the servant on the head with the hilt of his sword. In pain, he realizes the power gap between them is huge. Then, Belle says he'll hand him over to the professor for punishment. Already defeated, he says that if it comes to that, he'll use his last resort. Kneeling, he begs for mercy, asking to be spared. Seeing this, Belle is a little embarrassed by the over-the-top reaction. Lying on the ground, Bulk says he was just following Roger's orders. With a sigh, Belle comments that defying a noble's orders isn't easy, but Bulk thinks he can attack Belle while his guard is down. Taking a step, Belle says it's alright and that he'll forgive him. Thanking him, Bulk prepares to attack Belle, believing the false kindness. But Belle says he was just kidding and hits him with the tip of his sword. Surprised, he can't react to the blow that hits him squarely. With the servant on the ground, Belle says he knew exactly what he was planning. Running up, Lime asks if Belle is hurt after the fight in the forest. With a smile, he thanks him for his help and says Lime saved him. Embarrassed, Lime replies that Belle helped him too during the confrontation. With a fist bump, the two seal the new friendship that started there. The other students approach and thank Belle for saving everyone. One of them comments on how amazing it was that he defeated a B-rank knight. Furthermore, everyone realizes the truth about what happened in the forest. They understand that the monster was also one of Roger's allies in the plan. Tied up, Roger grumbles as the other students call him horrible. His classmates then praise Lime for managing to defeat Roger on his own. Surprised, they ask if Lime was strong all along and just hiding it. With a shy smile, he just thanks them for the compliments. Watching the scene, Belle thinks that's to be expected from the Night of Vengeance. From afar, Silpha watches everything from the top of a tree in the forest. With a smile, she just says she understands what happened there. Thoughtfully, she figures out what Belle's true sacred weapon is. Changing scenes, the day at the academy comes to an end for everyone. Walking, they comment that Roger will be punished and that they can now relax. Standing in the hallway, Silpha watches the two friends walk away. With a smile, she calls out to them, intending to speak with Belle. Turning around, he remembers that the girl's name is Silpha. Coyly, she asks for the name of the sacred weapon he uses. With a curious look, she confirms that its name is indeed Avalon. Surprised, he can't hide his reaction to having his secret discovered. Approaching him, she says that Avalon is the sacred weapon of the heroes of the past. Confused, Lime repeats the name Avalon, while Belle wonders how she knows. With a smile, she says the look on his face confirms everything. Annoyed, he asks what the problem is and what she wants with that. Laughing, she says it's obvious what she wants with that information. With a serious look, he stares at her, waiting to learn her true intention. Clasping her hands, she prepares to make her big request. Her eyes sparkling, she begs him to show her Avalon. Surprised, he's left speechless. Kneeling, she says she has always admired the sheath that holds the hero's weapon. With a sigh, he agrees to show her the sheath, since it's just for her. Taking the weapon, she shouts, amazed to see the real thing. Belle then asks where she heard about the sheath, curious about the story. Thoughtfully, he considers that one of the previous bearers might be her ancestor. Meanwhile, Lime says the weapon must be something super special. Thanking him, she says he made one of her dreams come true. She invites him out, saying there's a great cafe in town. Excited, Lime says the idea sounds great and encourages Belle to go. He agrees, but says he needs to bring one more person with them. The scene changes, and the four of them arrive at the town's cafe for their outing. Sitting at the table, Sarah eats a piece of cake, saying it's delicious. At the table, the four friends chat and have fun together at the cafe. With a smile, Silpha says she didn't know Belle had a sister. Watching the scene, he's happy that Sarah is having fun. He reflects that he never had a school life like this in the past. Suddenly, Silpha stands up and gets everyone's attention at the cafe. Grabbing her harp, she says she's going to play a song for them. Belle is curious to know what kind of sound a sacred weapon makes. With her eyes closed, she begins to play her harp for everyone. At the horrible sound, he spits out the drink he was having. Shocked, he yells that the music is terrible, as everyone else reacts badly. Laughing, she apologizes and says the important thing is to have fun. Seeing that everyone is enjoying it, the cafe's customers ask for more. With a smile, she points to Lime and calls him up to sing too. Together with the harp, the two of them start singing and playing in the cafe. Watching the scene, Sarah tells her brother that this is really fun. He's happy that his first real friends are these people. After the cafe, the four of them walk through the city streets together. Excited, Silpha says she wants to go shopping and pick out clothes with Sarah, but Belle says he wants to go too, and she immediately forbids it. Unable to go, the two boys are disappointed by their decision. Lime suggests they wait in another store, and Belle agrees. Walking down the street, Sarah comments that Belle is a great older brother. Turning around, Silpha just replies that she doesn't have a brother like him. Suddenly, a man appears and says he's finally found her. Angrily, she recognizes him, calling the man by the name of Evelyn. Silpha recognizes him as one of the officers from the Academy's student council. With a smile, he says they're half-siblings after all, but she replies that she doesn't consider him her brother and asks what he wants. With an evil smile, he says her weapon will be useful to him. Annoyed, she yells that there's no way she's participating in any wars. He just rolls up his sleeve, preparing to use force. Saying she's a problem, he warns that he'll drag her away by force. Suddenly, his hand starts to bleed, and he cuts it with a glare. The blood explodes and begins to transform into a different weapon. Frightened, Sarah screams, not understanding what's happening to him. The blood then molds itself, forming a red weapon in his hand. Seeing this, Silpha realizes he has a sacred blood weapon. In a panic, she screams for her bodyguard, calling out for Mary in the street. But Evelyn informs her that he's already taken care of all her bodyguards. Looking back, she sees her bodyguard's body lying on the ground. In disbelief, she's shocked to see the body on the ground. With his blood weapon, he moves forward, telling Silpha to get out of the way. Wielding her harp, she yells for Sarah to run because it's dangerous. Playing her instrument, she creates a barrier to defend against the attack. The blood tentacles clash with the barrier, creating a stalemate. He says that if she calls for help, it will be a problem for him. At that moment, he launches a blood attack in Sarah's direction, but the attack hits Silpha, who throws herself in front to protect her. The blood tentacle pierces through her chest, gravely injuring her in the process. Seeing this, Sarah screams her name, unable to believe what just happened. With a cold look, he says she won't be able to defy him anymore. The blood weapon begins to spread across Silpha's body. The blood envelops her completely, and he pulls her toward him. Terrified, Sarah just watches the scene, unable to move. Captured, Silpha is lifted into the air, her consciousness already fading. With a gesture, he prepares to take Silpha away from the street. Scared, Sarah screams for help, calling for her older brother. Suddenly, Belle appears, running at high speed toward them. With a swift slash, he cuts the blood tentacles and saves Silpha. Surprised, Evelyn wonders how his attack was cut like that. Picking Silpha up in his arms, he moves her away from the danger and to safety. Seeing that he has arrived, Sarah cries out her brother's name, relieved. With her friend in his arms, he asks what they are doing to her. With an angry look, he glares at his half-sister's brother. Evelyn asks if he's one of Silpha's friends from the academy. He then tells Belle to stay out of this sibling squabble. Belle asks Lime to look after Silpha and Sarah, and he agrees. Summoning his magic, he declares he'll handle this guy himself. Evelyn asks if he's serious and if he doesn't understand the situation. With his blood weapon, he asks what's the point of protecting Silpha. But Belle dodges the blood tentacles, surprising his opponent. Surprised, he wonders how the kid managed to dodge his attack. Shouting, Belle says that helping a friend is the most natural thing to do. He charges forward, but his strike is blocked by a blood shield. Evelyn comments that trying that attack was a waste of energy. Shocked, he wonders how a blood shield can be so strong. He realizes he can't afford to waste magic in such a close-quarters battle. Without waiting, Evelyn launches a sphere of blood at him. Taking the hit, he stumbles back, feeling the impact of the blood attack. Annoyed, Evelyn says he's irritating and that he's going to end this fight. Gathering his blood, he fires several projectiles toward Belle. Seeing the attack, he prepares to use his weapons once again. Summoning the Ragnaroks, he gets ready to counter the blood projectiles. Surprised, Evelyn realizes Belle has a second sacred weapon with him. With a shout, he fires both weapons at the same time. The shots collide with the projectiles, intercepting every single one with precision. After blocking the attack, he backs away, while Evelyn stands still in the street. With a surprised look, he can't believe Belle managed to block everything. Gathering all the blood, he prepares for one last powerful attack. The blood weapon begins to transform into a gigantic spear. With the spear in hand, he warns that the next move will be the end. But Belle replies that's his line, and prepares his own strike. The two then face off, ready for the grand climax of the battle. Suddenly, a new person jumps down from a building, saying this looks like fun. On impact, the newcomer hits Evelyn, who falls to the ground in shock. Landing on his feet, he creates a small crater with the force of his magic. In the middle of the street, the unexpected arrival leaves a hole in the ground. With a smile, he asks if they mind if he joins the fight. Startled, Belle recognizes him as a member of the student council. Angrily, Evelyn asks why Zial is here and what he wants. Walking over, a new girl says he's overdoing it against a bunch of kids. She approaches, calling him embarrassing and a weakling. With a mocking smile, she continues to taunt him in front of everyone. Annoyed, he clicks his tongue and angrily dispels his blood weapon. But Zial says a battle requires everyone to give it their all. With a yell, he unleashes his energy and transforms, donning a suit of armor. The transformation completes, turning him into a warrior in blue armor. Surprised, Belle wonders if they're also after Silpha. Holding a book, the girl tells the muscle-bound gorilla to do his job. At that moment, chains shoot out of a portal and trap the armored warrior. Confused, he's completely immobilized by the chains surrounding him. She then informs them they aren't here to fight, but for something else. Watching the scene, Belle realizes the girl's magical power is enormous. With a roar, he breaks free from the chains, shattering them with his strength. Now out of the armor, he yells Evelyn's name, waiting for an order. He says the assignment is a 1-month expedition in the forest. Grumbling, Evelyn says he has no choice and accepts the mission. As she leaves, the girl says goodbye to Belle, calling him a weakling rookie. Holding the Ragnaroks, he just watches the student council members depart. He realizes the student council is made up of true monsters. Turning to his friends, he asks if Silpha is okay after everything. With a smile, she replies that she's fine and apologizes for what happened. She's sorry for dragging him into her fight with her brother. Curious, he asks why she and her brother were fighting like that. With a sad look, she explains it's because he wants to use her. As the next heir, he plans to expand their territory into unexplored regions. Surprised, Lime says those regions are full of powerful magical beasts. She explains that Evelyn thinks her weapon will be useful in that war, but she says she doesn't want to fight and came to the academy to stop him. Seeing the situation, Belle realizes she has the same goal as him. Silpha remarks that she couldn't do anything and realized her own weakness, but Sarah interrupts, saying she was strong and protected her. Touched by the kindness, she just stares at the girl with an emotional look. With a smile, Sarah thanks her for saving her life. Seeing the interaction, Belle also thanks Silpha for her help. With a smirk, he says she can be grateful to him too. He remembers when he couldn't save his sister in his past life. Extending a hand, he tells her to be confident and that he'll help her. With a smile, Lime says he'll be with them and fight alongside them too. Turning to her new friends, she's moved by the support she's received. With a smile, she thanks everyone for their help and their new friendship. After the chaos, he thinks about the blood spear Evelyn used. He knows that in 1 month, Evelyn will come back for Silpha again. To get stronger, he decides he needs to go to his greatest rival.